2+2 Pokercast. I am your host, A. Schwartz, alongside Roscoe P. Coltrane.
Hey, how are you?
Here in the friendly confines of Chicago, I guess they call it. Terrence back in Las Vegas at the World Series of Poker. T, welcome back to the show, sir.
Thanks very much. Doing this on a bright morning of the Pacific time. You guys, you know, I've been a morning person for forever. I come to the World Series of Poker, finally got on the poker schedule, and you're like, yeah, you want to do a 7 a.m. show? And I'm like, sure, anything for the people, anything for the people. I was Chicago. I mean, I feel weird. I've been in Las Vegas for 5 weeks, and I'm the one who's in a safer city.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Chicago's great. It's we're in a nice part of town. Our buddy Matt Grapenthien was nice enough to let us use his apartment, and nice area. We'll hop on the train. We're a 10-minute train away from pretty much everywhere. First day we got here, it was, I guess, one of those days where the Cubs and the White Sox are playing at home at the same time. So we did the...
Well, the first day we got here was 4th of July.
Oh, sorry, yeah. We got here late, 4th of July, and it was kind of cool because we flew in at like 10 o'clock at night. We flew in over Chicago, and if you look out either side of the plane... Oh,
perfect,
It's that fireworks thing that you just see everywhere off into the horizon, which was pretty cool. And we managed to make our way to the apartment, and it sounded like there was like a gunfight going on all around the apartment.
There may have been. It
might have been. Yeah, we were not sure.
There were bombs bursting in air.
Right.
On the 4th of July, one way or another.
Good fun. And the next day we got up, did a Cubs game in the afternoon over at Wrigley. Met up with Simon, one of our listeners. That was fun. And then went to Chicago to see the White Sox at U.S. Cellular Field. Hopped on the train, headed down there, and that was a lot of fun. We were right up close down in row 5.
Took public transit to a White Sox game?
We did, yeah. It was
brave man.
Crazy.
Man.
Oh, actually, we took Uber, didn't we?
Yeah,
we rolled an Uber.
We took the train home.
We took the train home, rolled an Uber's, by the way, it's great being in an Uber city again. It's just so fantastic. And
as opposed to being in Vancouver, the not Uber city.
No,
people were complaining. I think there was a big convention in Austin not very long ago. There was actually a technology convention in Austin, which is, ironic, right? Because, Uber and startup. And they were bitching nonstop. Like, my entire timeline was bitching about no Uber in Austin, because I guess the cabs or the city has banned it in Austin. They were just on raging fucking tilt. But do you want to know the biggest city in North America that does not have Uber?
Vancouver?
No.
Ross is correct.
What? Really?
Yes, Vancouver's the largest city by population in North America that doesn't have Uber. So how bad do we suck?
That we do suck. The taxi union's pretty strong. But T, when you roll an Uber, do you do the pool or do you do your own car?
I usually just so they've got the thing where you've got you can do strangers in Chicago. Okay, so they don't have that in every city.
Oh, I see. Okay,
that's not based in every city. Seattle has that too.
It's
right?
awesome.
You just save money by riding with strangers.
You save a ton of money, and most of the time you don't get picked up. Like you're by yourself anyway.
Right.
We did it in I think we took one. It was like $16 or $17 if we did it ourselves, because we did it. We did it again in a pool, and it was $4. Yeah. And I'm thinking it's it was 20, 25 minutes in the car. How does the guy make money at $4? It's bad for the guy. You can't tip an Uber or whatever.
It's basically like a bus driver if the bus driver got paid per passenger. Right?
Exactly.
It's not a good spot for them. But I think a lot of the times they get some sort of subsidies. I mean, it's interesting. You can go on. There's a Reddit thread or forum rather for Uber drivers. If you really are curious about this kind of stuff, you can find out. You can read all about driver experiences and find out who's making money and who's not. Vegas is full of them now because Uber's fairly new here in Vegas. So I've been meeting guys at the jiu-jitsu gym who are driving Ubers, and of course we talked about the guy who won a bracelet, who was dead broke and driving an Uber. So I mean, everybody's driving Ubers now. It's obviously that whole flexible schedule thing, and it's cool. It's definitely cool when it works out.
Yeah. Talk about your week at the World Series of Poker, T. Last week we talked to you. You were a bit disillusioned. It didn't sound like you're having a great time. And some people were wondering about your future as a tournament poker player. But what happened this week?
Not too much this week. In fact, very little. I played the 1K Turbo, which I almost missed it because it didn't just flew off my radar.
It's a turbo.
Yeah, exactly. It just whizzed by. But I woke up in the morning and I was like, oh, there's a 1K with 30-minute levels today. that sounds pretty good. It's an 11 a.m. tournament. I can actually show up on time, see if I can run up a stack, and if not, it's not going to be too painful. I was there for, I want to say like 40 minutes. Do you want the bust out hand? Do you want me to say that?
Let's do the bust out hand.
Okay. So it's kind of interesting because I'd been even though I hadn't been playing poker and I was down on poker, I've been watching a bit of the 10K 6 max final table. Have you seen any of this? The Martin Kozlov wins this tournament.
I have not. No.
It's obviously great. It's obviously great stuff because when you get to a final table of a 10K 6 max tournament, you're going to be watching 6 pretty good poker players. And the commentary was great too. I don't remember who was commentating at the time. I watched most of it, but I think it was Ryan Fee that sort of made this observation that there was basically some action. Martin Kozlov was at the point where he was just ICM crushing everybody. It was maybe like four-handed, and he had like 70% of the chips.
Wow.
He's just like opening like 8-deuce offsuit and stuff like that, right? Because awesome. nobody wants to play back at him without a big hand. And Ryan Fee said, there's this kind of throwaway comment where he talked about like something like 5-4 suited, and he had raised. The guy who had 5-4 suited had raised and called a re-raise, and they weren't very deep. And I think it was Fee, and he said something. It might have been Jason Less actually, and I'm going to pretend it's Jason, and he says something like, these hands play better at most stack sizes than people realize. Like, everybody knows that 5-4 suited, if you're 200 big blinds deep, of course is a play, but he was kind of saying that even when you're not that deep, it's more often a play than people think, and it sort of stuck in my head. So I'm in the 1K turbo. It's the blinds are 50-100, which means it's the second level. So I've been here for half an hour, and I can kind of see who's good and not good, and and a guy 3 off the button opens for 225, and I look down, lo and behold, 5-4 suited.
And you're never folding now because you've just heard this discussion.
I can never fold. Well, I mean, I wouldn't fold anyway, right? Like there's an opener, a few off the button. I'm on the button with 5-4 suited. I'm playing this every time. What's more interesting now is that I flat, and the small blind, who seems to be like this decent European player, I think he's French, or he sounds about
squeezes.
French. He squeezes to 775. The initial raiser tanks and folds. So now I've got to call like 550, and there's 1300-ish in the pot. And now that
and you're still fairly deep, right?
Is in my ear. Yeah, it's deepish. I've got like I've lost a little, so I've got like 4,500 or something like that. So I'm calling like 500, and there's got like 4,000 behind. All right, I call. So I've got the 5-4 of spades, and the flop comes the 10 of hearts, 6 of spades, 5 of hearts. So I have bottom pair, a backdoor flush draw, and a backdoor straight draw with a 4. And he bets 725. And I think, boy, this is the spot that you get in all the time when you call 3 suited.
Yeah.
Good thing I'm in position. But I call, because I mean, I think this is probably a better than average flop. I think there's if it's. If it's like an ace or a king on the turn, obviously any bets fold. There's probably a lot of cards on folding on the turn. The turn, however, is a 10 of spades, and now I pick up the flush draw and the top card on the board.
You can rep the top. Sure.
I can clearly rep the top pair. He thinks for quite a while, and he checks. And now, of course, I have to think like, okay, so if this
if he's got ace king, is he calling? Do I have showdown value? Is he calling with aces?
Right. Well, if he has ace king, you have to think he's folding unless he's got hearts or spades, right? Like I've got 2,700 behind. I should be able to blow him off ace king.
Sure.
He might be checking a 10, being clever. In which case, oops, I'm just going to walk into it.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is a good spot to bet. The question is like, well, okay, there's 2,000 in the pot. I have 2,700. Do I just shove the turn? What would I actually do with a 10? And I figured what I might actually do with a 10 if I had 10-9 here or something like that is, I might bet like 1,200 and leave myself 1,500 behind. I bet the 1,200. He tanks for a really long time, and then he jams, and I'm basically like, nice play. Like your eights are good. Like that's sort of what I'm thinking in my head. Your jacks, good play moving all in with your jacks, but I'm pot committed. I call, and he has ace of diamonds and the king of clubs.
What?
He has ace king, no spade, no heart. So I'm actually like a huge favorite.
Yeah.
I basically have no, he's dead to a non-spade ace or king. Boom, offsuit king rolls off on the river, and that was my turbo. And I was wow. I thought I was bluffing, and I actually was. I was a 9-1 favorite, and I thought I was bluffing.
That's funny.
So these are the kind of bust out hands. Like, okay, that sounds like a bad beat story, and maybe it is.
No, it's interesting. There's interesting spots.
Well, and it's one of those ones that don't get me all emo and pissed off about poker because it happened early enough in the tournament.
It doesn't waste your day.
The second level of a 1K turbo is exactly the spot that I want to bust out at, right? Like if it's a big blind tournament, I'm pissed. If it's deep in a tournament, I'm pissed. But like if this was like 3 tables left in a 5K, oh man, would you guys be hearing about this? This story would be going another 20 minutes. I was like, okay, well, what am I doing the rest of my day? Like, I'm just going to go have lunch somewhere and go to the gym.
And the guy might have got the evil eye on the way out, I think, if it was different circumstances.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty good when you're at like a 1K starting table, which is full of like fairly bad players. And everybody is just like looking at that guy going like, what?
How did that happen?
They're just like, wow. And I'm just like out the turn, like, see you guys, good luck.
Yeah. How much do you hate his play on the turn? I mean, you bet 1,200 basically.
You're going to put all your chips in. Just put all your chips in.
You're not folding. Yeah.
If you've just decided that on the 10, 6, 5, 10 repeat turn that you're going to put all your chips in, you probably just stuff all your chips in.
Shove them in there.
Or you might take a different line like check raising the flop all in if you want to get it all in the flop, and then that you look really strong. You might get a hand like 2 8s to fold, right? Like, so if I have 2 8s and he checks it to me, I might bet, and then that's a big equity win if he check raises me off like 2 8s, 2 7s, 2 3s, any sort of paired hand. He's probably not going to get a 10 to fold ever, but that's so yeah, he definitely misplayed the hand, but I mean people in 1Ks misplay hands, so. So that was the only real tournament that I played this week. Now, I did register.
Yeah, let's talk about this tournament. This was yesterday. The event was number 61, the $1,000 tag team, Nolan Hold'em.
All a buzz on Twitter.
It was.
You couldn't have, if you follow any poker players at all, you probably heard something about this event. It seemed to be fun. The team's event.
So it's $1,000 per team, right? It's not per player. You can have up to 4 members in your team. Is that what I read that correctly?
Yep.
And as little as 2. Right? Okay. So
every member of the team, the only qualification is every member of the team must play 1 round of blind sometime before level 7, level 7 ends. So registration ends at level 6, so at dinner as usual. But they give you the opportunity to register during dinner. But every member of every team has to play in orbit to qualify.
So this is basically the find a horse event, right? Like
this is the event where if I'm Jason Mercier,
yeah,
I am joining forces with like Fedor Holtz or something like that, playing 1 orbit and then going back to playing whatever mixed game tournament I'm playing, right?
Yeah.
Like this is because it's the whatever. I saw Ben Yu on Twitter is just like, I need a partner, like, I need somebody to play. I'll play the whole tournament, but I need somebody else. And this is, of course, a common thing. I think there were a lot of teams that really got into the spirit of it. I think, like, the Grindettes, they made a team. So that was really cool. There was,
I think Jonathan Little played with all his family, his mom and dad.
His mom and dad. So in the chip updates, you see the little team, which I thought was very cool. I mean, obviously, if John goes deep, and I think he actually made day 2. He was chip leader at some point in the tournament. I don't think his mom is going to be playing at 2 tables with 6 hands. I could be wrong. Maybe that'll happen. There were definitely teams that got into it. Daniel Negreanu joined forces with like Vanessa Selbst, David Williams, one other. There were some like monster teams in this one. It was kind of wild. Who else was in there? The Mizrachi brothers. All the 4 Mizrachi brothers joined the team.
It seemed like it was chaos. Twitter made it sound like it was complete chaos at the Rio with no room. The tables at the World Series of Poker are pretty far apart. It's not like a normal card room where you walk in and it's kind of tight to get between tables. But some of the pictures I saw, it looked like it was tough to get around anywhere in the Amazon room.
Yeah, I mean, I was mostly there at the late registration period where sort of everybody was hanging out on the rail, and they made frequent announcements. If you are not in a hand or if you're not imminently tagging in, you must be outside the tournament area. They had broken one of the 4 sections of Brasilia, and players were just hanging around there. It's funny because they even actually said, like, if you're if you're on a team and you're not playing right now, please go to the gold section. You may have a seat there. So I was thinking of so you just see all the people in the gold section who are just sitting around chatting, and it was like a bullpen in baseball. It was kind of you got some chips and cards so they can stay warm. You don't want to send them in.
Except they could wave them off, right? Like you could walk up to a table and go, "All right, I'm gonna jump in here," and the person that's playing is like, "No, go away. I'm fine."
Give them some practice stacks to shuffle.
Yeah, exactly. You got to give them keep the fingers warm. You see, anytime one of the team members is all in, like 4 guys will jump over, or actually like guys from both teams will jump over. So you get a lot of sweat. So it's kind of like a final table atmosphere. Because everybody's invested in all these pots. Oh, my favorite team. I forgot. Did you have a favorite team that you noticed? The John Little was
no, I didn't. Go for it.
Niall Farrell, who was heads up for a bracelet. I think I want to say which tournament. Oh, yeah, it was 1500 shootout. Niall Farrell finished second in the 1500 shootout. Tweeted out a few days ago. Okay, he is at Feraldo87 Poker, and I apologize for jumping around to the 140 or less, but this would definitely qualify. So he ends up losing to a random Russian woman who I don't think anybody's ever heard of.
Sofia Umarova?
That is her.
Yeah.
Sophia. So this Russian girl, wins against him heads up, and he tweets, "Anyone knows how to contact Sophia (in brackets the girl who caged me heads up? I need partner for the tag team event. I think I'm also a little bit in love. Thanks."
Oh, that's awesome.
Gets all the retweets in the world, as you would expect. This girl has no Twitter preference or no social media or whatever.
Right.
She actually, I've heard, didn't even do an interview with Tatiana after winning the bracelet.
Okay.
She might be the only person who didn't do that. I guess he finally managed to track her down. They did join a team together. Had a big stack going on early on, but I thought that was like the key.
And are now engaged.
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe they'll be engaged at their bracelet ceremony.
Right.
So that was my favorite team. So I joined a team. Basically, nobody that I think anybody would know. My friend Jeff, who's just been a longtime grinder for a while, he was in a situation of looking for a partner. He has a friend at the Rio, and his friend was in a satellite, and he kind of, I guess, registered the satellite like too late. And so he was like, "Oh no, my friend's in the satellite, so now I need a partner." Turns out the friend busted from the satellite, so all 3 of us just went over the cage. I'm like, "Well, it's a free roll for a bracelet because every player gets a bracelet,
right? If
you qualify. So there's no reason not to have 4 people on your team. Like if my girlfriend were around or something like that. The only qualification is you have to play 1 orbit.
And you did play an orbit.
I did play an orbit.
Did you voluntarily put money in the pot?
I did 3 times. So my friend Jeff, as the team captain, I think the captain has to play the first orbit. He plays his orbit, and then he tags in Jan, the guy who's in the satellite. Jan plays an orbit. Both of them fold the entire way through. I think Jan might have moved all in and picked up the blinds. I immediately sit down on the button. There's a limper to me. I have ace-10 offsuit. I shove. The limper calls. I double through. He has ace-4. I double through. Just
what?
10 on the
he
block.
Limp calls the ace-4?
It's a $1,000 buy-in tournament.
Okay, but how deep are you? Like
Jonathan,
you're in the second round.
Oh yeah, I'm like I shoved for like 10 big blinds.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's still a terrible play, obviously. But I mean, there's going to be people in this tournament because, I don't know how good Jonathan Little's parents are, but there's a lot of people who are just in there with random people who had never played poker before,
gotcha.
Right? I mean, that guy was in there with like 35,000, so he limped in for 500 and he called.
How 10, did you hold against ace-4 with ace-10?
Shocking, right? And then
so you double up.
I double up, and then a couple hands later, I raise, the big blind defends. I see bet the flop, and he folds. And then later on, you have to play an orbit that includes the blind, or you have to actually play through a round of blinds. I fold my big blind, my small blind, I pick up ace queen, I raise, and the other guy folds the big blind. I mean, that's it.
How do you get tagged out after doubling up and winning every pot you play? Now you get tagged out.
Well, it wasn't my tournament to play. Basically, I just figured, I probably will come back if those 2 guys like final table or something like that, or they run up a big stack and they play really deep because they tend to be more satellite. They play a lot of like satellites and short structure tournaments. But they
got their charts down. Yeah. They're chart guys. They're
definitely short stack chart guys more than anything. So I'll let them handle everything under the 15 big blinds. But if suddenly we just keep making sets over and over, and all of a sudden we're
boys, let me back
we got a table draw against like Connor Drynan
Right.
So I mean, for day 2. But I'll wait for that to happen. I'll just go to the gym, and then if I get the call, like I'm on, it's sort of like the doctor at the hospital. He's just got his beeper with him.
Right.
Somebody has some weird surgery requirement. So I'll go in and perform surgery if I need to, but it's mostly unlikely.
Other surgery.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the summary. Montel Williams teamed up with Jamie Gold.
That's oh my God, that's awesome.
Looking at those teams, Jeff Gross was on a team with Antonio Esfandiari and Brian Rast.
That's a good team.
I'm guessing only 2 of those guys played substantially yesterday.
Right. Rast was a little busy.
Rast might have been a little busy. John Gale and T.J. Shulman. I don't know who T.J. Shulman is.
Me either.
Is he related to?
Do not know.
Yeah, Jeff and
the love child of Cloutier and Nick Shulman.
So here's the question. T, we've talked a lot about it here at the World Series of Poker. You haven't won a bracelet. It's you're often considered to be one of
where this is going.
One of the better players that does not have a bracelet. If you somehow or another won a bracelet in this event by playing one orbit, how are you going to feel?
Amused.
Right.
I don't think there's any other way to feel. I mean, it's unlikely that I would win a bracelet by playing only one orbit. I would probably
play 3 orbits. I mean, the point is it would be weird.
I would probably get tagged in for some of the deep stack short-handed stuff near the end anyway. If it were to get that far, it's very unlikely. Because I'm probably a strong player at certain, probably a stronger player at certain stack sizes.
I wonder.
But let's say it happened. Let's say I go to the gym today and some guy blows my knee apart and I'm in the hospital for the next 2 days or something.
By the way, and then somebody presents you with a bracelet in the hospital.
Yeah, and then they wheel me to my bracelet ceremony,
right,
to play the national anthem. Highly amused.
Weird, right? Yeah.
I it would be the most undeserved bracelet in poker. Well, actually, there's a very good chance whoever wins this bracelet will pick up the most undeserved bracelet in poker history because,
sure.
say Jonathan Little wins again, his mom's getting a bracelet,
right?
I don't know to what extent she's gonna be playing 3-handed against whatever Connor Dryden and Motion Charania but yeah, there's a very good. I mean, I hope it is because shit like this makes poker fun and gives us shit to talk about. It's great.
Well, and it's not the first time there's been a tag team event. There's been a mixed event. The Doyle Brunson has a bracelet from.
Event, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I wasn't around in 1978 or
whenever it was. Yeah,
but I think they made people play more of the mixed.
Yeah,
event,
I think they did.
One level each or one orbit each. This is literally you don't even have to play an orbit. Actually, you only had to play through your set of blinds. I played an orbit, so I've actually did more of my commitment because I played all my free hands.
You almost should have played the minimum. Play 2 hands and just.
Now that I think about it, I should have just showed up for the big blind and left after folding the small one. That just be Ben Yu was looking for somebody on Twitter. I almost joined Ben Yu's team because I saw that he was looking for somebody, and he was like, "I'll even sell you half my action." So I was like, "Oh, that's free."
There we go. Yeah.
But my friend Jeff, he got priority.
So you got no action, so that would be even funnier. You win the bracelet for playing nothing, and you don't even get any cash.
Well, I have a little bit of the action.
Okay.
But I mean, whatever. It's good. I get the diamond card too.
That's the key, right? Screw the bracelet. I get the diamond card.
It's a hilarious event.
It's funny.
There's so much amusing about it. It's good to see that some teams took it seriously, in its spirit, like the Rast and Esfandiari and Jeff Gross team, and then I said, Daniel Negreanu, Maria Ho, Vanessa Selps, David Williams. What an absurd team that is. Motion Charania I just mentioned is with Marvin Rettenmeyer. There are some sick, disgustingly good teams in this thing too, and and then there's also the cute teams like the John Little team. Christy Arnett and her husband are a team. There's people who did it in the spirit of things, and then there's people like me,
super teams.
Yeah, and
then
you
just hunted value,
right? Or there's people like Ben Yu who are I'll put out a tweet and some random will probably want to be on my team, and I'm just going to play the whole tournament. I would suspect that at least in a couple levels, 90% or 80% of the teams are just going to be a one-man team, right? I mean, they're just going to be who's the best player? At the final table, what is the point of not having your best player in the tournament? Is there any point?
No, there isn't.
Other than the guys got a tilt problem, maybe if you're your best player is
Probably not your best player if he's got a tilt problem.
He's just like Helmuth, and he just like goes on monkey tilt because he takes a bad beat, and he was the chip leader or something like that. Then you might want to substitute him.
Can you imagine on Helmuth's team, he gets to the final table, and some guy goes, Phil, you're a tilt monkey. Get out.
Yeah, just taps him on the shoulder.
You've got no history of winning these things.
I assume it's the team captain who gets to choose, and I have a hard time imagining Helmuth not being the team captain of his team.
Right.
Like him agreeing to that, but yeah, I guess.
So I wonder if there was some Team PokerStars discussion about Jason Mercier and Vanessa Selps teaming up.
Yeah, that
might be a little interesting if Vanessa was playing the final table.
IMAX maybe.
Vanessa IMAX.
That you can go with it.
Yeah,
for sure. God.
That'd be good.
But yeah, like Jason, it's definitely Jason's best interest to just find the best no limit hold'em player he can find, and then he can go play, the PLO8, which I'm sure he was playing yesterday.
Well, there could be a bidding war. Like let's say it's Federer Holtz. Jason could go to him and go, I'll pay you, X over the buy-in to come and play.
At minimum, I'll just like free roll you, and I'll just pay you whatever you cash for or whatever.
Right.
Like, something. That might be a little bit much, but yeah, because he might finish second.
Which would suck.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that could go on in there, and yeah, but it's fun. People really seem to enjoy it, and again, some people took it in the spirit of things, and some people turned it into a total farce.
All right, well, we got lots more at the World Series to get to. Why don't we get some in case you missed it?
How did he miss the open goal? 6x4, and he comes up 0. Oh, no!
Oh, yes! He missed it!
He's missed it! How on earth did he miss that?
In case you missed it, there were some interesting storylines at the World Series of Poker this week. Let's go through a few of them. Event 46, good Canadian kid, Kristen Bicknell wins her second World Series of Poker bracelet in the 1,500 Bounty No Limit Hold'em. She beat out 2,157 others. Takes down 290,000. She had previously won a bracelet in the Ladies' Championship in 2013. A casual player. 3 career cashes at the World Series of Poker and 2 bracelets, which I thought was pretty amazing.
Great
track record. Variance is awesome. She's the first female, first Canadian to win a bracelet this year. Kind of shocking. We get to Event 46 without a Canadian. I remember a few years ago we had maybe 8 or 9 bracelets, I want to say.
Right. There was a year which we killed it, and I can't remember which year it was. But yeah, when I read that stat too, that they played Canada on the podium for the very first time on June 27th, made me a little ashamed.
It's sad.
Yeah. Well, we got in there before Canada Day, at least.
Right. Good story. Event 47 was the 10K Deuce to 7 Triple Dodge Championship. Johnny World Hennigan wins his 4th bracelet. It was interesting. I guess Nolan Dalla did an interview with him after the event, he asked, John, how does this win compare with the previous World Series of Poker victories or accomplishments elsewhere? Again, this was his 4th bracelet. Hennigan says, what was really striking to me is I didn't play that well. I got very lucky in the tournament. I didn't really have it, but I got lucky at the right times. I bluffed and got caught, and I made so many hands. I normally think I play pretty well, but not this time. I played like shit, which is kind of funny, right?
I think I've seen a few or read a few or heard a few interviews this year of people being. I think the last person who did this was Rafael Lebrun in the 6 Max Limit Hold'em, who basically said, "Yeah, I was the worst player at the table, but I won this thing somehow." Definitely, more humility coming in the post-exit interviews these days than there used to be, and I think that's reasonable. As I think a guy like Johnny World, he's been around so long too, and he sees how much tougher the game has gotten. And you're in an event like 10K Triple Draw, the track's a tough field, all this kind of stuff. Like he's sort of realizing I'm being put in these spots where I'm not really sure what the right play is, and then obviously you get to see the hand
and
at
you
the end.
Suck out.
Yeah, you suck out, or you break when you should have padded, or you padded when you should have broken, and you just caught the 8 and the other guy caught the 9 on the end. I was going to say on the river, and then did you see this interaction with Daniel Negreanu?
No.
Tweeted. So I guess Daniel Negreanu listened to the show last week, so he's listening to the show. So what's up, Daniel? If you're listening again this week, he was giving me a hard time when I was talking about Triple Draw, the 10K Triple Draw last week, because I I tend to pick up on the slang that other people use, which is I call the first draw the flop, the second draw the turn, and the third draw the river. Of course, triple draw is exactly the same betting structure as, say, Limit Hold'em or Limit Omaha 8 or better, or basically any flop game, because there's 4 betting rounds, and it goes 1-1, 2-2, basically, in terms of the bet size. Small bet, big bet, big bet. And so a lot of people just say before the flop, on the turn, on the river, even though obviously there are no board cards in triple draw. They're all just draws. But so a little side note, Daniel, I didn't say it this week. But yeah, like basically, there a lot of situations in triple draw, I think, especially when you get heads up and shorthanded, when both guys are drawing and going into the river, right? And one guy has a way smoother draw, but it really doesn't matter, right? Because if you're drawing to 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm drawing to 3, 4, 5, 7, like, yeah, your draw is way better than mine. But if you just catch a king and I catch a jack, then I win. Like, that's just, and that's a situation that doesn't happen nearly as much in other limit poker games.
Right.
So it's a very high variance game, when it goes 1-1 into the river, because a lot of times it's just like, who's catching better, or maybe you pair threes and I pair deuces, right? And just go check on the end, and I got deuces, I got threes. So yeah, I think a guy like John Hennigan, who's been around forever, knows when he's getting lucky,
Yeah.
I remember one time when I think I don't remember if it was an interview or I think I was just sitting with him at the table. I talked to Jeff Madsen like in 2011 or something like that about his run back in 2006, and you just like, yeah, I mean, when something like that happens to you and you're 21 years old and you just like crush it first year, you just think like, yeah, poker's
going to
easy.
happen every time.
This is poker's easy. But John Hennigan's been around enough. He's under no delusions that he just crushed the final table and won it all.
I think Jeff Madsen quickly realized that was the case because after that year, I remember hearing an interview where he's like, I just bricked the last like 50 or 60 live tournaments I played.
Yeah, right. That can happen. Event 49 was the 1,500 7-card stud. Friend of the show, our buddy Sean Deeb, won his second career bracelet in that event. Event 50 was the $1,500 No Limit Hold'em shootout that we talked about a little bit before. Sofia Umarova beats out 1,159 players to win her first bracelet, $264,000. Only been playing poker for a year, and only her second cash ever at the World Series of Poker. Her quote was, "I dream big. I want to be the best poker player in the world," she said. "I know I'm not there yet, but I want to have the most gold bracelets anyone has ever had. That's the goal." Wow. That's what you're supposed to go for, right? Which is cool. It's kind of a neat attitude. Like, she's been playing a year. Yeah. And she probably realizes it sounds dumb, but it's one of those things where it's like, that's my goal, so I'm going to try my hardest to get to that goal. That's really the only way I can approach it, type thing.
Watch out, Phil Hellmuth. We talked about this, we talked about this last week with like guys who could challenge the record for most bracelets, and we were talking about like, is it a young person or is it just like a guy who's in his 40s and has 6 or 7 bracelets right now is a great chance. I mean, it could be who knows, it could be Sofia Umarova. It's going to be tough because the field that she's playing in are going to be a lot bigger than the ones that have previously existed in the past, but it's good to have good on her. Maybe she'll get her second bracelet in the team event with Niall Farrell.
Event 51 was the 10K 8-handed PLO championship, and some more Pokercast karma. Our buddy Brandon Shack Harris wins his second career bracelet in $900,000, biggest cash ever in poker. He called it the most gratifying moment of his poker career, which I thought was pretty interesting given that he almost won Player of the Year a couple of years ago, but this tournament here, obviously, $1 million. That's almost $1 million.
Super anyway. Prestigious tournament as well. You've got all the bosses coming out for this one. Obviously like the 25K that's happening right now. But basically, this is exactly the same field. As far as you can tell, like the 10K is in terms of the pro density. Right. Anybody who was playing the 25K probably also played the 10K. And so good on. We thought his Pokercast karma manifested last week when I think he finished 4th or 3rd in the 08.
No.
And no.
Residual karma.
There was momentum. There was Pokercast karma momentum.
But cool that he's a mixed game guy. Cool that he wins. I believe his other bracelet was in PLO as well. Mm-hmm. So absolute boss on all games. Event 52, the 3K No Limit Hold'em. Lucky Chewy, Andrew Lickenberger, finally gets his first World Series of Poker bracelet. And $560,000. Andrew, I was mentioning you are mentioned often about the best player of their bracelet. Andrew certainly was considered that. Been playing at the World Series of Poker for a long time.
I was actually surprised when I saw the headline Andrew Lichtenberger won his first.
Yeah, exactly. The quote from him was, nutrition, a healthy lifestyle, and positive attitude were all integral factors in my victory today.
He drinks a lot of green stuff at the table.
Yeah, he's
like a lot of things. Weird fermented stuff. I was at a party with him
fermented
yesterday.
Stuff.
I was at a party with him, and he had like this jar of some concoction.
Did you ask what it was? I can't believe you're not in there asking what it is.
I was asking what it was, and I literally I cannot remember the ingredients right now, but I did he offered me some, and I'm like, yeah, I'll take a shot of that. And I drank it, and I was like, that's not the most horrible thing I've ever had. Like, okay, that's fine. Like, it was like algae, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was like
algae?
Various forms of algae that were in a blender, and he had it in like a mason jar. I mean, Lucky Chew's gone full hippie, and good for him.
Oh, for sure he has, yeah.
Because I think, he's right. I mean, we've talked about Mason came on a while ago, obviously, and he said this stuff is all overrated, but I think there's at the very least like a placebo effect that's involved with kind of living a healthy lifestyle, and I think there's more than a placebo effect of just sleeping well and having your brain working properly and being healthy. And you see that now. That's definitely this trend in the high stakes community.
Event 53, the $1,500 mixed 08 Peel 08. And Big O, which
the Omaha triple,
the Omaha,
triple Omaha,
the bang bang, won by Alan Lee from Los Angeles. I wanted to mention this tournament because our buddy Gavin Smith, old G, made a deep run, ended up fourth. Good to see him going deep in tournaments again.
For sure, yeah. Like Gavin, Gavin's been off the radar a bit. Obviously, like he's,
moved
being
to Alaska.
Yeah, he's like in a lumberjack hunting polar bears or some shit.
Right.
I don't know what he's going on, but I mean, he's obviously was one of the biggest stars in the game maybe 10 years ago, I think. We would go hang out with Gavin in Toronto, and people would be like asking him for autographs as we're trying to walk to a stadium.
He was a rock star, yeah.
He was definitely a rock star. So, yeah, I wanted to see him take that one down. But, okay, what's the over-under, Adam? So, again, just for the people who missed it the first time, this is limit Omaha 8 or better, pot limit Omaha 8 or better, and Big O, which, of course, is 5-card Omaha 8 or better. How many people were playing the wrong game? Like, how many hands were played where the guy at the showdown was playing the game? Like, in this tournament. It's got to be the most confusing.
40%?
Yeah.
Something crazy.
The only way you could make this worse was to add Badoogie to the mix.
Yeah, that would have been good.
And then for like 5-card Badoogie or something like that. This is the tournament that's just made for like
if you're not paying
screwing
attention.
up, and that's amazing that
you're in trouble. Yeah. Event 54 was the Crazy Eights, the 888 event. $888 entry fee, $888,000 going to the winner. This was a pretty cool story. This guy that ended up winning, his name's Hung Lee. He beat there were 6,000 entries, taking home the big cash and his first bracelet. Not only his first bracelet, but his first ever cash. And we talked.
This is third time we just talked about people
just
winning,
banking right away every time they sat down.
What is this shit? I'm done with this finishing 27th shit.
I almost did that. I came fourth in my very first World Series of Poker event and thought this was going to be a cakewalk. No problem. Let's do this. But I mean, we talked, I think it was last week about Mitch Towner, who ended up winning the Deep Stack, the Monster Stack event. We're actually going to have Mitch on the show this week to tell his story. But this story is pretty cool. Hung Lee won the 888 event. He owns a nail salon in Dayton, Ohio. Says he has 5 kids, a couple work in the salon. He said in his interview that they have a low income. The business doesn't make a ton of money, and this is life-changing money for him.
Wow.
But the final hand was hilarious. I don't know if you saw this hand history.
I did, and
oh my god. Okay, so let's tell people this hand.
I haven't seen it on the stream. I've only read it, and I really want to go back and look at the WSOP live stream but the archives to actually watch Tuckman and whoever's in the booth with Tuckman lose their minds.
That's a good idea. I want to do that too. I went back and watched. What did I watch? Oh, because we were having Mitch Towner on. I went back and watched the final table. That it was fun because I hadn't watched a ton of them, and it was neat that they're all archived there. You can go back and watch, and you can skip. And the great thing about the way they do it now is they list the hand number in the screen, so you can go on the timeline of the tournament and look for big hands, and so you don't have to sit there during the boring stuff. But so the final hand, Hung Lee is heads up with Michael Lech for the bracelet. Hung's on the button. He limps with pocket deuces. Lech raises to 800,000 in the big blind.
Can we actually run this story without the hands being? You already mentioned one of the hands.
Okay.
Let's do the unveil at the end because I feel like it's so much better that way.
I should have done it. Okay. Anyway, you know now Hung has deuces.
Okay. Hung Lee's got deuces. Michael Lech raises in the big blind with an unknown hand.
And Lee calls. The flop comes ace 10 4. Ace 10 4 with the ace 4 diamonds, the 10 of clubs. Lech now bets at 900,000, and Lee calls, which that flop hits a ton of raising. That's just smashes a raising range, right?
Yeah, it is true. Like it's hard to fold a pair.
Heads up,
kind of. It's always kind of fold a pair, but it's also kind of hard to play a pair properly. He does have positions, so I think the call's reasonable.
It's reasonable, but I think folding's reasonable too in that flop.
You're gonna end up folding a lot. Yeah, I think folding is reasonable because you've got better risk play odds. The other way you could do this is take control of the hand by 3-betting before the flop, but because you're gonna end up folding most turns, obviously that aren't deuces.
Right. So the turn is the 8 of diamonds. Now it's ace 10. 4, 8, 3 diamonds. Lee, by the way, has 2 black deuces. Lech now checks the turn. Lee bets 1.5 million, and Lech re-raises all in. So he check raises all in on the turn. Lee calls with the 2 black deuces. Lech turns over queen jack of clubs for a gut shot. Nobody has a diamond.
Double gut shot.
Sorry, double gut shot. Nobody has a diamond.
And 2 overs, obviously.
And 2 overs.
So he can win with a king, queen, jack, or 9. So Hung Lee makes basically the call of the century. I don't actually know how much Lech raised all in for. I imagine it wasn't a whole lot more, but I'd have to go back and check the archives. Like we said, watch the stream to figure but she had to actually call it off. I think he calls fairly quickly too. But again, I want to watch the stream before I say that for sure. But
the river bricks off, and
the river bricks off. He wins with unimproved deuces, just being a boss and being like, nope, deuces are the best hand. You're good. You're drawing, and fades the world. And
I think if you want to watch any of the final tables again, that's maybe the one to go watch because it sounds like it was pretty entertaining. I think a lot of hands like this happened, and Lee ran quite good, and good for him. I mean, that's really cool. I mean, we're kind of laughing about this hand, but this makes these great stories at the World Series of Poker. So
absolutely, build a new wing on the nail salon.
That's right.
Let's get some more Yelp reviews in there and get some advertising. Big billboard in downtown Dayton saying come to Hung's nail salon.
Yeah, exactly. Event 55. This is the prestigious $50,000 Mayan Players Championship. But basically the most prestigious bracelet every year. I think maybe even more than the main event.
Of course,
the money comes with the main event. But if you're a professional poker player, the $50K championship is the money doesn't come as the same as the main event. But when people look at toughest field to beat, biggest accomplishment maybe in poker, it's winning the $50K bracelet.
Yeah, as tournament accomplishments go, for sure. I mean, the real accomplishment in poker is just being good for a really long time at a
right, paying your rent every month. Yeah.
We have no way of assessing that. There's no sort of like award or pro trophy or sort of anything that's associated with that. So the $50K is the closest we can come. It's a deep structure tournament that involves multiple games and has a huge buy-in and eliminates most everybody except for the best players in the world, pretty much.
Okay, so let's talk about this because your winner this year, Brian Rast, who also has been on the Pokercast recently. Are we claiming karma? It's been a while, but maybe 2 or 3 months. But anyway, great for Brian. He wins this event for the second time. He was at the final table with the grinder, Mike Mizrachi, who has won twice before as well. Justin Bonomo went
this year, I think, Mizrachi?
Yeah, finished 4th. Yeah. So are we approaching reasonable sample size to call Brian Raston and Mike Mizrachi two of the greatest poker players alive. I mean, I think we're probably getting close to that. This, yes, it's 2 or 3 tournaments. I understand they won 2 bracelets. Mizrachi 2 bracelets and a 4th in this event. But it's not, it's not a one-off. You're playing against the best players in the world every time for 4 days straight. I think it's a decent sample size.
Well, was there any thought that those two guys weren't great poker players?
No, but I mean,
anybody out there?
No, I'm not saying, but we call lots of players great poker players. Now we're talking about some of the best, 2 of the best poker players.
I think it is still too early to say just based on that. I mean, like I said, the true test is are you playing the biggest games in the world and winning month after month after month? Like, that's the real test. I don't know. I mean, the accomplishment of winning these tournaments twice is amazing, but they are fairly small field tournaments. Somebody was definitely going to win twice. Like, that it's a bit like the 2 bracelet bet that you smoke MJ on every year, just because it's the birthday problem, right? Because we've been running this thing for 10 or 12 years, something in that ballpark. So there was going to be at least one double winner.
Okay, so but here's the thing that you mentioned. This is in the same breath as the birthday problem, but it really isn't, because you're playing 8 game. I think for most of the years it's been 8 games. Some years it was horse, isn't that right? And then they had no limit hold'em at the final table once. But
and then last year was 10 game, actually.
Yeah, you can't fluke out against the best players in the world with this structure, like Hung Lee did with banking that no limit hold'em tournament.
Well, but it's not. That has nothing to do with the birthday problem, though, because
no. But I'm saying it's less than.
Let's say every person in the field. So we've got these field sizes that are like 60, 70, 80. Let's say every player in the field is completely identical. Love the Sirens, by the way. Perfect ambiance from Chicago.
Right.
Let's say you have a 60 player field and everybody's equally good.
Right.
So I mean, then you've got the birthday problem of then the first guy wins. That one of those random guys. So he's 1 out of 60. He's got, say, 9 chances to win again, right? So he's 9 out of 60 to win approximately. Math guys don't nit me on this. You know where I'm going.
Yeah.
And then the second year some guy wins, and then he's got 8 chances out of 60 to win every single year. And so on and so forth. And then you create. So even if everybody in the field was equal, you would have had a double winner by now. The fact that we have 2, a little bit anomalous. But I mean, I don't think you can make an assessment and say these guys are the best because they've won this tournament twice. And Mizrachi, what he's done first and fourth now is obviously pretty awesome. And like I said, I don't think there's any belief that these guys aren't really great players, but you don't
think it proves it?
No, not at all.
Event 56, David Peters won the $1,500 buy-in no limit hold'em event. And he finally gets a win, 38 cashes, another 1,000-player field at the World Series of Poker. I saw an interesting tweet about David Peters. Somebody was saying on Twitter that you could have bought his makeup for like 18 cents on the dollar a couple of years ago. And now I think he crushed some high rollers and wins this bracelet for $400K. I didn't really understand that there was much of a market out there for buying makeup, but apparently his was for sale at some point over the last few years. Have you seen people selling makeup before, T?
I have never. I mean, I don't imagine that this is something that shows up on Twitter, so we probably wouldn't. Yeah. It's just you've got to sort of be in the MTT community, I'm guessing, to have some awareness of this.
He also came second in the 10K no limit single draw to Jason Mercier earlier.
Oh, so obviously having some great results. Ryan Laplante cashed again, 11th cash this year at the World Series. He ended up getting his 12th cash in the tag team event we talked earlier, or he is going to get his 12th cash when the tournament's complete.
They cashed last night, yeah. So.
Right, it's just not we didn't tell the tournament's complete or whatever.
I cashed 2, by the way.
Yeah, you did. You'd like to point that out.
I played 9 hands of poker and I cashed a World Series event.
We're going to be joined by Ryan. Ryan's going to come on and talk about his World Series this year. So looking forward to that as well on the other side of the break. So why don't we take a break here? We've got two interviews coming up in the second segment. We've got some more in case you missed it to get to, some mailbag and a few hands for the Roscoe report. T, you got a hand, I believe, too, as well. So we're going to do that. We'll be right out. Oh, you've got something to talk about with PLOQuickPro.com.
I do. PLOQuickPro.com is the #1 training site for PLO players. It is the only site with an entire suite of PLO courses designed by WSOP bracelet winner John Beaupre and 2015 5K PLO scoop winner and PLO crusher all-around Alien Slayer. Over the past few years, they've successfully taught more than 1,000 players how to master the fundamentals, increase their win rate, and move up in stakes for good. So whether you're a small or micro stakes grinder, trying to become a winner for the first time, or you're already a winning player and you're looking to make more money and move up to the mid stakes, especially if you're a no-limit player and you're looking to make the transition to PLO, they've got videos, PDFs, and tutorials to help you plug leaks and look at the game in a new way. So if you would like to learn the guaranteed fastest way to master the fundamentals, increase your win rate, and move up in stakes for good, visit PLOquickPro.com/PokerCast to get your very own personalized PLO curriculum. You can also reach John personally and get an extra personalized curriculum at john@PLOquickPro.com. Adam has stepped out, so I'm going to throw this to break. This is the 2+2 Pokercast, presented by 2plus2.com. Catch you on the other side.
Coming up on the next episode of All In or Knocked Out.
I guess private function sounds better than unregulated fight between two gamblers.
What's your name?
Dan Bilzerian.
Hi, I'm Scott Seaver. What do you want?
No, what do you know about professional poker player?
Yeah, sure. Professional friend of JC Alvarado. Everyone I know seems to be betting on this. It's really crazy, actually.
Hey, poker fans, don't forget about the 2plus2.com digital magazine. Each month, a wide array of poker professionals and media write fascinating articles about the game you love. Want to learn about big blind versus small blind hand ranges? How about optimal Jeopardy daily double strategy? Topics like those and many others are covered every month. Head on over to 2plus2.com to see what the magazine has to offer this month. Okay, people, most of the kittens have perished. There are a few left you can save, though, and here's how to do it. Get involved with the Pokercast by emailing your questions, suggestions for the show, or even record a sound clip. Adam will be using the best ones on the air. Well, let's face it, probably the worst ones as well. I can see you there at your computer. Send an email right now. Totally disagree with one of Adam's takes last week? Send an email. Love last week's interview? Email. Want to know how much cash Adam has on him right now? Email. Pokercast at 2plus2.com is the address. Ship the funny to Adam today.
Welcome back to the 2+2 Pokercast. We are here in Chicago at the Podcast Movement Conference Tee. We were down there last night. They had the awards. The podcast awards this year were interesting to be at. I didn't even really know that there was going to be.
All we get here in Vegas is like the porn star of adult video network.
Right.
You guys have the good stuff over in Chicago.
You got the NHL awards too. Didn't that just happen?
True. Yeah. Everybody, and that's highly prestigious. I mean, how else would you know who had the best plus minus this year?
Right. So we go there. We go to the awards. It's kind of fun. They're nominating. They're the categories that you typically would think: the history, learning, religion, spirituality, sports, humor. They had awards for all the best podcasts in each area.
Did they have a best gaming podcast?
Hobbies and games. They did not.
Yeah, maybe we missed.
We would have crushed it if we would have. We missed getting called out for our victory, but anyway, so
sorry, we didn't have speeches prepared. Anyways,
the history one was interesting because Dan Carlin was Hardcore History was nominated, but didn't win. And I'm thinking,
Daniele Bolelli? That's the only other person I can think that could win.
No, it was
a
Lore.
podcast called Lore. History Lore.
Didn't know it. Never heard of it. But I'm thinking anybody that beat Dan Carlin, I can't imagine there being a better podcast.
It's got to be a pretty good show. Now I feel like you should probably download Lore. And like Dan has the most hardcore, no pun intended, following out there. So yeah, it's pretty surprising. Maybe it's because Dan only does like 2 episodes,
or he doesn't come to the awards, and maybe you got to go to the award to get it. Who knows?
You think it's like a political?
I don't know. Maybe
it could easily be like
the majority of people that accepted awards weren't there though, or like one.
Well,
awards.
They sent a video in. Yeah, that's true. Mark Maron won for humor, and he's
acceptance.
Yeah. So,
Dan Carlin's other podcast got nominated also.
I didn't realize
he listened to, the political one.
Common Sense, that's the one. He produces one of those, like, seems like about once every week, but Hardcore History seems to only come out like twice a year.
So can you imagine
I can kind of understand Hardcore History not winning from that perspective. Hardcore History is like less of a podcast and more of just audiobooks.
It's an audiobook.
Oh yeah,
they come out a couple times a year and they're like 9 hours long. So
because he probably has to write that whole.
I can't imagine the prep that goes into work to one of those shows. I mean, there's
well, it's like you say, he writes a whole script, and I've sort of got a little bit of a glimpse into this now, writing All In or Knocked Out, which, by the way, new episode when about, Ross? What do you think?
It should be this week. What?
All right.
Yeah.
New one, All In, Knocked Out. But yeah, it's very different. We're just talking off the cup. When you have to do what Dan does and talk about a subject for 3 hours, right?
Brutal.
Like, you have to know the subject backwards and forwards. You also have to like write it out and plan it and script it and make it flow from one direction to another. Make sure that people can remember the character that you referenced an hour ago. That kind of thing. Like that, it's amazing the amount of work. So it's not surprising he only puts out a couple of them a year at all. And he's even said before that he'll get he'll go into things like he'll do them in the studio and he'll just talk into the microphone for half an hour and he'll hate the way that it sounds and then he'll do it all over again. The guy's obviously like a serious perfectionist too.
The other thing was Serial was nominated. I can't remember what category it was, but news and events maybe.
Was it Serial?
Yeah,
Serial or season 1 of Serial? I assume
it just said Serial. It didn't say. So, but again, shocking that. Serial was maybe the most talked about podcast in the history of podcasts.
Oh, unquestionably. When I tell people I'm doing All In or Knocked Out, they like 80% of the time they say, "Oh, it's like a Serial."
Yeah.
Like because the Serial crossed. It definitely broke podcasting into the mainstream, I think, and especially that type of narrative storytelling podcast over to the mainstream. And on Syed, by the way.
Yeah,
getting a new trial,
he got a new trial. I saw that. Yeah. So there's a big, exhibitors area. All kinds of different stuff about monetizing podcasts, which interests us now. Equipment, all kinds of different things, pertaining to podcasting. It's really kind of fascinating when you go to one of these shows. There was a Patron booth too. I went up and ordered a couple of shots, and they didn't really know what I was talking about.
That's the one. The Patron booth is the one where every month somebody sends you a new shot of Patron.
A new shot of tequila.
They can pledge one shot of Patron or multiple shots of Patron.
They looked at
however people think that the show is worth, they send you that much Patron.
So we've stumbled on a good idea. You got to drink the Patron on the show. That's how it works, right? That's how
since me and Ross don't drink,
so I got to drink it all.
This is now the Pokercast that's brought to you by one obscenely drunk person who can barely sit up straight.
All right, let's get into some more in case you missed it. More Chris Ferguson stuff. We talked last week about...
Chris Ferguson, when was the last time we didn't talk about Chris Ferguson on the show? It would be at least, I guess it would be the week before the main event, or the first event. But
so this week he's playing, and Andrew Brokos, who's the host of the Thinking Poker podcast, you can check him out over at Thinking Poker. He drew the same table as Chris Ferguson this week. Now, Andrew's a mild-mannered guy. He wondered what he should do. He writes a blog about it, and head on over and check it out if you want to read exactly what he said. But Andrew had, I think, $60,000 tied up for a couple of years on Full Tilt Poker. It was a significant amount of money to him. It wasn't all of his money, but certainly the opportunity cost of having that $60,000 was a big deal for him. Obviously, didn't know he was going to get it back the entire time as well.
It affected his life, clearly.
It affected his life.
As a pro poker player, like having a substantial portion of your bankroll, it's going to affect what kind of games you play. It's going to affect, there's a lot of cascading effects, right? Like, especially in those years, you needed money to make money.
Yep. And he's sitting at this table wondering what he should do, if he should say anything, if it's appropriate. And he didn't. He bites his tongue for a while. And then somebody says at the end, or maybe after he busted, not Andrew, but the person busted out and reached over to Chris and said, "It's been an honor playing with you." I guess that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. And Andrew, he couldn't take it anymore.
It's an honor to play with you, and it's good to have you back, I think, is the...
Right. Yeah.
Which is the casual person at the table.
So he didn't yell or scream at him, Chris. He engaged him in a calm manner and asked, Chris about, the negligence and the fact that he had money tied up at Full Tilt. Chris got pretty indignant pretty quickly and said, "But did you get it back?" Which is really kind of sickening if you think about it, because Chris didn't have anything to do with him getting it back. PokerStars, Isai bought Full Tilt Poker and paid it back. In fact, Chris and his lawyers blocked the sale, or threatened to block the sale, to the Bernard Tapie Group, because when Full Tilt Poker, when they shut down, they had I think Chris had $17 million or something of his money still in the accounts that got frozen. Again, it's $17 million of money that was paid to Chris that shouldn't have been paid to him, but Chris put his own interests in front of the players' interests at that point, because he's blocking a potential sale to Bernard where the players would get paid, or some amount of money.
We don't know ultimately what would have happened.
We don't,
but
it's still so Chris again getting indignant and saying, "But did you get it back?" I really thought was kind of it made me kind of feel sick, because it's one thing, and we've talked about this, Chris has decided to not say anything, not explain his situation, what he was responsible for, not talk about it at all, not do any kind of apology to the players, anything like that. So that's one thing, and we've talked about how much we disagree with that, and we feel that Chris should probably say something. But it's another to be completely indignant about it and say, "But did you get paid back?" and have that kind of attitude.
I've got the blog post pulled up, and so so Andrew, like you said, is a fairly mild-mannered guy. So this would have taken something for him. He's not a confrontational guy. He's not that guy who whipped out a cell phone and said "fuck you." He's not the guy who in my tournament, screamed across the room and yelled "fuck you." This is a guy who's a mild-mannered, thoughtful guy, and he says to Chris, "I had $60,000 locked up for 2 years," and then Chris's response was, "And did you get it back?" And he wrote, and Andrew says, "It was $60,000 I couldn't access for 2 years, and there's no interest." Chris says, "Sorry about that, but you got it back?"
Yeah.
And then somebody else chimed in at the table, a third party at the table, says, "Well, I had $9,000 in bonuses I never received," he said. And Chris says, "But you got the balance back?" And then Andrew interrupts, "No, you asked whether we got paid back. The answer is we got some of what we were owed." And then he goes on to saying that, Andrew is sort of like welling up on the inside. He feels his face getting red. That feeling that you get when you're in a confrontation and your skin is starting to flush and all that kind of stuff. Especially people who are naturally confrontational.
And you're going to be shocked by the attitude from Chris, right?
Yeah. For sure.
Because that would have taken me back. Like, what?
Somebody at the table just said, "I had $9,000 that I was owed." And
yeah.
And Chris didn't get, and it's like, well, yeah, it doesn't matter whether that's bonuses or money. That's money that you got. I mean, bonus money is money that you got from playing on the site.
Right.
That was promised to you, and that was said like, okay, this is as good as cash, basically.
It's not less than a balance. It's equal to a balance. Yeah,
it's equal to balance. There's interest when you have money tied up for 2 years. Generally, you could put that in bet and get like 1% interest at least. And we talk about how important access to money, liquidity is,
and the present value of that money 2 years later is less than it was when.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is very tremendously disappointing, because I tweeted this when the story came out.
Well, because you haven't been. I understand you have a past relationship with Chris, so you haven't really been as completely upset about his take on how he's gone about it, because we don't know.
Well, I mean, it's not even that. It's not that I haven't. It's just that well, I thought he was a decent person, and so I gave him the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
I've hung out with Chris, and it seemed like he was a decent guy. And the more that stories of this nature come out, the more that I'm coming to think that I was wrong. Because definitely, by the way, please go to thinkingpoker.net and read this blog post.
It's a great story.
he encapsulates the feeling so well. And I think, you asked me last week, Chris sat down at my table, did it feel awkward? What was the mood like? And if you want to know the real answer, I think this is a great place to start, because Chris is obviously playing a ton of events, and he sits down at a table, and you just never know what you're going to get, right? It depends if you get that one guy who's going to be loud and aggressive, or you get some fanboys who are, like the guy at Andrew's table is like, they saw Chris on TV and they don't know anything about this, and then but you're going to have probably at least 3 or 4 grinders that were affected by this. So it's always going to make for an awkward situation. But the more these stories came out, there was a story last week where who was a Poker Listings asked him, Alex Villegas asked him, are you going to issue an apology? And Chris just goes, an apology for what?
Oh, he said, what are you talking about?
Well, yeah, what are you talking about? And it's just the more that you read it, the harder it is to give this guy the benefit of the doubt at this point, because you're just so unaware. Like, again, even if Chris had nothing to do with anything, like even if it's just completely the perception that and he was just on the board of directors and he had no idea what was going on, like even giving him the best possible benefit of the doubt in this situation, to not even have the awareness that people would be mad at you, that people are owed something.
Yeah, how unaware are you? Like he completely misjudged the situation. He must have. He had to have completely misjudged it.
You're unaware is the exact correct term. It's like a complete lack of empathy, a complete lack of understanding, and people, rightly or wrongly, think that you were the tremendous beneficiary, that you made a ton of money scamming them and locking up their money for a very long time, and money that would have only, as you mentioned, money that only came back because of the benevolence, not necessarily just like a charity, but maybe a business decision or whatever.
But he had his reasons.
Sure, like because PokerStars had its shit together, basically.
Right.
I mean, because Isai Scheinberg was running a company the proper way and bought out this beleaguered company.
Right, and Daniel Negreanu chimed in. I think he did an interview with Poker News, and I'll quote Daniel here. Chris, you made millions and millions of dollars off this company. Then you hid for 5 years when things got out of shape. Then you said nothing at all. Whether you're guilty or not, you've said nothing, which makes you guilty. If you don't feel like you're guilty, say so. Say something. You ask for the players to trust in you. Do you believe they're owed some kind of apology? Any man with a shred of integrity or human decency would understand an apology is owed. I'm not sure that I totally agree with what he said, because if you've said nothing which makes you guilty, I don't think that's true. I think that makes you unaware, like we talked about a minute ago.
Right. We sort of have this sort of idea that like you're not guilty just because you didn't say something. Like that's not the truth. Like
But the rest I agree with. Any man with a shred of integrity or human decency would understand an apology is owed. I totally agree with that. I think it's too late. I don't think he can apologize now and have it be any kind of real apology at this point. I think it would, just come off, whether true or not, it would come off as something that's damage control.
Yeah, when we're 2 weeks removed from him saying, "What are you talking about?"
Right. Yeah.
Like
clearly,
he doesn't think come out with a really forthright, heartfelt apology and said I did all these things and I betrayed people's trust and all this stuff. His attitude right now seems to be, "Oh, they got their money back. It's fine," and that's just awful.
Yeah,
that's truly awful. Like, oh, you got your balance back, you're fine. It doesn't matter. Like, there's some guys who waited there's guys who got their money back 3 months ago. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because of something, because maybe they were an affiliate, or maybe they were a Red Pro who was getting paid some tiny amount of money for being a Red Pro.
They had a balance that was, in dispute.
Yeah. There's a lot of those guys too, or they accepted. There's a lot of guys who accepted the lesser amount
because they didn't want to wait.
Yeah, because they didn't want to lay odds, basically. Like, they didn't want to lay $200,000 to win $15,000. They would get the money back. So
Howard Lederer went deep into $50K, and again, I think and if these guys are going to continue to play in these events, I think we're going to get to the point, obviously, where one of these guys is going to win, a prestigious event or not, but they're going to win and go deep, and I think we're going to run into some issue. I think some people are going to be upset about that.
Chris and Howard making the November 9, together?
Right. Or the 50K. Let's say they made the 50K.
Jungle Man?
Yeah. I mean, I just, don't want to see anything go sideways. I don't know what they're thinking. But, And who would have thought Chris Ferguson would have looked worse than Howard did at this point? Like, you know what I mean? Howard came out. He answered the question. He didn't answer the questions. He came out and
wait, like 3 years from now, when Howard sits down at a poker table, like he's not even like it's going to be fine,
right?
You know,
I mean, he might get the odd comment or two, but he's not going to get the vitriol that Chris Ferguson is going to get.
Getting with the way that he's going, because literally every week of the World Series, like I said, we've talked about Chris Ferguson. You know, we're showing it was shocking, and he stood up at the 10K stud and just didn't say a word and sat down like he was any other player. And we're like, okay, well, what's his plan here? What's he going to do? And then it became clearer and clearer that his plan was to pretend like he did nothing wrong and doesn't owe anybody shit.
Yeah.
At this point, like Howard, yeah, he. You know, a good example of this is Justin Bonomo, right? So we all, you know, obviously what Justin did way back in, 2000 when he was 12 years old or whatever, is in comparison to, the multi-accounting that he did on Party Poker was at the time fairly scandalous, right? People, Justin had a bad reputation. People thought of him as a cheater. People called him a cheater.
Yep.
He, a lot of the times, didn't want to show up at live tournaments. He didn't feel comfortable. But
he admitted he cheated.
Exactly. Eventually, he came out. He got that maturity. And Justin is unquestionably one of the most mature guys out there on the poker circuit right now. And now, when he makes a final table, when he does good, people are
big rail cheering for him. Sure.
Yeah, people are happy with it.
Took time. Took a lot of time.
It took time, and it should take time, right? Like you don't immediately get forgiven for the bad things that you do, but Justin, through being very scrupulous over his entire career for the last 10 years or however long it's been, has earned that reputation, and you can overcome hits to your reputation, but it does. The first step is saying that something wrong.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. In case you missed it, PokerStars has left 2 more markets. This time they're leaving Israel and Slovenia. Interesting thing about these moves, nothing. Like, let's take Israel for example. Nothing's changed in the online gaming laws in Israel. But so the question is, why would they leave now if nothing has changed in any substantial form within the government in Israel? And what happened was the supervisor of banks decided that financial institutions and credit card companies must decline any transaction requested between a customer and online gaming. So Israel's had sort of these murky online gaming laws for a while, but there was some banking issues came down, not within the government, but within the banks, I guess, that said you can't process these transactions. So then you get into a case, I guess, where you're making golf balls again or whatever you're going to end up doing.
Right. Very similar to the UIGA situation.
Yeah. So, but also PokerStars now is still trying to get into the United States, and different state gaming commissions are going to look at how they operate around the world and decide if this is a company that they want to do business with or have bad actor clauses, etc. So. Stars looks at that and says, okay, well, we've got a chance of getting California. We've got a chance of getting some of the bigger states. We've got to leave some of these murky markets. Well, there's a lot of murky markets. Canada's a murky market, for instance, but they're still operating in Canada. So, it's interesting because it's almost like, this risk-reward calculation that Stars has to do for each of these countries and decide where they want to continue operating. Slovenia as well. The government is moving towards regulation in Slovenia. At the end of the year, I believe they're going to be offering licenses to online gaming companies. So you would think Stars, okay, well, if they're moving to regulation and we want to comply at this point and pull out if it's for 6 months, a year, whatever it is, and then continue offering the games in Slovenia. By the way, Slovenia is the home of somebody you were trying to get on the Pokercast as a guest.
I would have
give us that story.
It would have been great. So. Those who have been on 2+2 for a long time, and of course this year's show has been on 2+2 for many, many years, will know a player. We've made mention of a player named Angelina who used to play like the 20-40 game on Paradise Poker like nonstop and crushed it.
Yeah.
And then would play like 30-60 on Party Poker and some of the bigger games on Stars as well. And I think it sort of dropped off the face of the earth. And you were always wondering who Angelina from. I don't even. How do you say this? The capital of Slovenia. I'm not even going to try.
Ljubljana.
Ljubljana, something in that LJUB, whatever, the capital of Slovenia. And people always wonder, of course, who that person was. You know, you'd have all these players from random cities in Sweden and Norway too, and it was mostly behind a guy who was. It was a pseudonym of a guy, I think it's safe to say now, who was named Jonas, and I don't know how to say his last name either. Man, Slovenia has some hard words. Zidarčić, something like that. And Jonas is actually somebody that I chatted with online back in the day. We talked on, I don't remember if it was like AOL Instant Messenger or one of those ones. Instant messengers people used in the early 2000s. He was one of the guys who was very influential in me first playing Heads Up Limit Hold'em. Of course, he was a specialist in that game. He was also friends with a grinder at the Bellagio who played 3060 and 8160. And we had some poker discussions, but he basically didn't want it to be known that he was playing online poker, so he created this whole Angelina persona. He's the former host of the Slovenian version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which how awesome is that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's a big part of why he wanted to be on there. So I sent out a tweet to him now. He's more open about this stuff. I've seen some interviews where he's talked about this, so I feel like it's safe to say this. I sent out a tweet to him when the Slovenia thing passed to see if he wanted to come on the show and reminisce the whole time. He's a slam dunk.
Oh my God, he would be two-hour interview.
Yeah, well, it would be a great interview because the guy's a great talker, a great storyteller. If you do yourself a favor and Google a couple things, Google Jonas. So his online forum name was Ismet Fekali, IZMETFEKALI. That was sort of his name. I think that's like Slovenian for like donkey shit or something like that. But who would know? Because it's Slovenian, right? Like nobody speaks Slovenian as a second language. And then so a few things you'll want to Google on that are if you can find the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire post that he wrote on that, and also on the old 2+2 archives, the fur coat dilemma. Do you know the fur coat dilemma?
I don't remember the fur coat dilemma.
Fur coat dilemma is awesome. I don't want to ruin it for the story because I could tell the story and I get the gist of it. But it comes to about making big laydowns in Limit Hold'em. It's actually a theory post, and if you just Google, let's see, fur coat dilemma is met. Yes, okay, beautiful. The website, please still be live. November 27th, 2000. There it is.
T, give us the quick rundown of the fur coat dilemma.
Sure. Well, okay. So there's the original post on this. The fur coat dilemma is a response to a strategy question that was posted on RGP back in November of 2000. So turn of the century.
Rec Gambling Poker was a discussion board for poker back before 2+2 was around.
Back before 2+2 RGP. So
and then died after a while because it was unmoderated. It was a spam fest. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's one of the best arguments for moderation in history because it used to be a fantastic forum. You used to have like David Sklansky and Daniel Negreanu getting into arguments about it. Like, how good is that? Right?
And then it was nonstop bonus codes for Party Poker to sign up.
It was bonus code, and then weird conspiracy theories about 9/11 started showing up on there after.
Remember Doug Grant? There was a guy conspiracy theory guy. He was an online troll, one of the first online trolls.
Yeah, right. Doug Grant was like. He was like a crazy conspiracy theory guy. He was convinced that everybody who claimed they were beating blackjack at card counting was lying. Basically, he was saying like there's no such thing as card counting, and nobody wins money at blackjack, and probably nobody wins money at poker either. He was just a Looney Tune.
And his posts were pages and pages long. Like it was like a window inside a really troubled man. So it was like a car accident. You had to read it.
He once said that I, like me, Terrence Chan, was the founder of Poker Stars, and that I actually didn't exist, and I was a member of like a Chinese mafia who was like sent here to like convince people that they could win money at poker so that I could like illegally launder triad money into online poker.
It was fascinating.
It was fascinating. My life, according to Dove Grant, is way more interesting than my actual life, and I lead a decently interesting life.
I didn't know you were at the triads, too.
They were saying that like the CIA was keeping tabs on me and like would potentially call in like the this is before the drone strike era. I can only imagine what he thinks now. But like they were
right.
like imminently they were going to call the fighter jets in to like bomb my headquarters in Costa Rica or whatever because like I was the kingpin of some massive order. Like he would lose his mind. It was great. But anyway, we're getting a bit
okay. We lost our train of thought.
Fur coat dilemma. Google fur coat dilemma Ismet Fakali, but the short version of it, for those who are too lazy, is as follows. This guy posts a hand on RGP. It's a legit strategy question back in the day when legit strategy questions were asked. And this guy's there's a multi-way pot. It's just a gigantic pot. It's been like capped on multiple streets, multiple ways. And the nut flush bets out. Somebody raises. The guy with the second nut flush, as it turns out, flats. The guy with the nut flush 3-bets it. And then the guy with the second nut flush shows the king high flush and throws it into the muck. Like he's getting like 50-1 at this point, basically. And ace, the ace high nut flush scoops the pot, and he was just blown away. And he says like, "Man, I don't know if I'll ever be so good that I could fold the second nuts in this gigantic pot, right?" And the story is like, of course, wow, like that's an amazing fold. And that's the sort of lesson that he tries to take away from it. Ismet or Jonas writes, and he quotes the guy like, "Perhaps a day will come when I will be able to make such a lay downy." And there's like a little typo. It says lay downy. And Ismet writes, "Arg, someday you will make such a good fold. It will be a good one, and you will be happy. You will be able to afford a shrimp cocktail at Binion's with the money that you've saved. You will feel like a champ, and you will do it again someday. Next time, some guy with a queen high flush will drag your pot. He will buy the cocktail waitress a fur coat, and he will fuck her blue for a week. Now, which guy do you want to be? The smart guy with the shrimp cocktail, or the stupid guy with the sore dick?" And that's the fur coat dilemma. So the fur coat dilemma for years and years on both RGP and then later on 2+2 was known as a situation where there's a gigantic pot in limit. You know that you've been beat, and you just lay it down. You always think of the fur coat dilemma. David Sklansky follows up with a pretty epic response of him to write, when I wrote my 8 mistakes of poker and contrasted the mistake of folding when you should call with his opposite, I did not have Ismet's explanation available. It will be included in my next edition. Epic post. Do yourself a favor and go into the history. Google Ismet Fakali. He's a slam dunk Internet Poker's Wall of Fame. I tried to have him on the show. If we could have him for 2 minutes, I would be thrilled. He's a good old friend. He was very generous with his time when I was coming up in Limit Hold'em. Totally retired from poker now. He's a celebrity. It's funny, nobody knew it at the time, but he was like a celebrity who just loved poker, and he created this fake name so that people wouldn't know it was him.
Meanwhile, he
just playing poker on internet.
Hopefully we can get him on one day. That would be fantastic. In case you missed it, a sad story this week. Matthew Hogue, a poker player, 26-year-old poker player from Iowa, was found dead at the Rio after being at the Rio to play the World Series of Poker. Had played several tournaments. They're still doing some toxicology reports on him to determine the cause of death. Don't want to really speculate on how it happened yet. There's lots of rumors out there, but until we find out exactly what happened, it's probably not the best idea to
other thing I want to mention about the story, it's Matthew Hogue, not Matthew Haugen.
Right.
So there's been a lot of confusion. There's 2 poker players. One is a fairly well-known one named Matthew Haugen. That guy is alive and well. Matthew Hogue is a guy who also cashed recently at the World Series, was around. I think he cashed in the 888 event, and he made day 2, I think, was it at the Aria or the it might have been the Venetian, had his stack blinded off, obviously, after this event. It's that's sort of, you say you don't want to speculate, but the reason why poker players are sort of weird about this is, usually you make day 2 of a tournament, you don't just kind of go crazy and binge on a bunch of drugs most of the time. I mean, it does happen, certainly, but that's certainly part of the weirdness around this story. So obviously, thoughts with Matthew Hogue's family, and hopefully it will just a terrible accident.
Yeah, indeed. We'll find out more, I'm sure. In case you missed it, PokerStars is testing the removal of their smallest no-limit hold'em cash offerings. They have a $2 buy-in that's wildly popular. If you did look on the client, I'm not sure if they're there or not because we're in the States. I can't check, but massive amount of games. This is a 1 cent, 2 cent blind, $2 buy-in. In Belgium, they are
$2 maximum buy-in.
$2 maximum.
Yeah, I think the minimum might even be like 40 cents or something if you buy in with 20 big blinds.
Yeah. In Belgium, they tested it to take those out, and it's expected to be removed from the worldwide pool as well. The theory seems to be that anybody buying into a 1 cent, 2 cent game, if that game goes away, they'll just buy into the next biggest game, which is a $5 buy-in game.
A 2 cent, 4 cent, or
2 cent? Yeah, I believe it's
2 cent, 5 cent.
2 cent, 5 cent, maybe.
Yeah.
But interesting that they are doing that. The feeder system of cash games is very important, that you have a stepping stone for people to get up. When you start talking about 1 cent, 2 cent, you're basically playing. It's similar to play chips, I would imagine. I've never played the games, but I can't imagine anybody grinds them for a living. I could be wrong. But, do you think that theory, T, is reasonable, that if they're going to buy into a $2 game, they'll buy into a $5 game?
I think it is. So I don't think that this is like the biggest ramifications. I mean, I definitely wouldn't want to see this going too much further. And I actually have played 1 cent, 2 cent, and it is appreciably different from play money.
Is it?
Yeah, I would very strongly recommend playing 1 cent, 2 cent, or if you live in Belgium, 2 cent, 5 cent instead of playing play money, because it definitely, you'll still get like the 5-way limped pots and people going to showdown with any pair, but it does play slightly more realistic. Because I think the people who are on there are, a lot of the times, they've been given like $10 from a friend and given a hand of starting charts or whatever like that. It's some sort of general concept, whereas the people on play money, because you can reload infinitely, I think there is a real thing about even putting $5 on a site versus unlimited top-ups. I think unlimited top-ups are bad. That's, of course, what you get in free games. I think, just from sort of like a psychological perspective, when you spend $5 on something, you kind of want to get your value out of it.
Right.
So a little more. So again, this is not a big deal. I am seeing, by the way, you can run the Stars client. You just can't log in. There's a lot of 1 cent, 2 cent games going right now in the world.
So it's expected
there's
to
like
be
50 of them right now.
Right.
That I'm looking. But of course,
and then there's the Zoom pool.
There's a Zoom pool, which looks like 300 players right now at 8 in the morning. So, there's 700 players at the Zoom 1 cent, 2 cent table. So, I wouldn't want to see this go too far. Like, I wouldn't want to see the smallest game be like 25 cent, 50 cent, because then you're getting into money territory where you can't introduce new people in. That's always been one of the beauties of online poker, is that you can give somebody $50 and it'll last like forever, even if they're terrible. If a 1 cent, 2 cent, because you don't want people like just jumping into like 50 cent dollar or something like that, because they are going to get crushed by people who are pretty decent at poker.
I can't imagine the marginal cost for offering those games for PokerStars is very big. Right?
They just don't get any rake out of it. I mean, that's the point.
They do rake them. They're raked low.
I mean,
they don't make money.
Percentage to the big blind,
it's like 13 cents or whatever. Then
for sure, but it's not. But it's not a ton more of the 2.5, I wouldn't imagine. But anyway, it's
you can always rake them more too. Like, you could start the rake generation at, like let's say if when you're playing 3-6, you take the first dollar when the pot reaches $20 or whatever it is, right? Like, you don't, if you say you're playing 3-6 cents, you don't have to wait for it to get to 20 cents. You could take it at 10 cents or whatever. And
I assume that the rake is the highest at that level in terms of BB 100.
I think it's actually the lowest I read at 1 cent, 2 cent. It's one of the places where the rake percentage, relative to the size of the game is low, which surprised me too.
Then I guess if you just make the rake threshold, I guess the problem is you can't rake.
You can't make it a rake trap if they're going to use it as a stepping stone, right?
Well, no. I think the more issue is you can't rake. The software's probably not able to rake up partial penny.
Partially, right? Yeah.
Right. So, like, if you're playing $1 or $2, you can take 32 cents out of a pot. You can't take 0.32 cents out of a pot without making some serious software adjustments. And then what do people do when they want to cash out $7, 76 cents, 0.345, whatever? So I think that's the issue, is you can't have a partial cent.
It's a 3.5% cap with 30 cent cap for any pot.
Oh wow. That is 30 cent cap.
30 cent cap is 15 big blinds.
15 big blinds.
That's pretty big.
Yeah.
But the percentage is lower.
It's 4.5% with 50 cent at 10.25 cent.
There you go. So we've got some stuff to get to. We got some guests coming up. Why don't we slip in a few of the emails we got this week here before we get to some of our guests? We'll do the show sort of as it comes to us this week. Why don't we hit the mailbag?
And now,
that right there is the mail. Now let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please, Malcolm? I'm dying to talk about the mail with you all day. Okay.
Mailbag. Email number 1.
We have one voicemail this week.
Hey, Ross. It's John from Groton, Connecticut. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I just listened to your most recent episode and heard that you didn't have any voicemail, so wanted to reach out to you guys. I've been listening to you for, I'd say, at least 10 years, since before you were sponsored by 2+2, and I've always loved the podcast. And we've gotten a lot out of it, so I look forward to every episode. So keep up the good work. I guess the question I had for you, I'm a long-time cash game player at both Foxwoods and Mohegan. Started up, like a lot of people after the moneymaker boom back in 2003. I started up, I think, next year, 2004, so I've been playing for about 12 years. Mostly cash games, not many tournaments. And the question I had, I started out as a limit player, a little bit online, but mostly live. I always found, even back in the heyday, well, certainly post Black Friday, I always thought that the online games were tougher than the live games, at least at similar stakes. So I mostly played sort of mid-stakes cash game, limit hold'em cash games like 5-10 and 10-20. I used to have a 5-10 game with a kill at Foxwoods, which was a fantastic game. The kill would bump it up to a 10-20 for the next hand with a forced bet by the person who won. And the 10-20 game, the 10-20 has almost died out. Really, the 20-40 still goes pretty strong, but that's a little bit bigger buy-in than I'm usually comfortable with, so I don't play in that game very often. So out of necessity, I've taken up 1-2 no limit. Just because there's so many more games of that than there are at limit. And in Vegas, it's even, as you know, even more lopsided. It's hard to find any limit holding games in Vegas. At least at, in Mohegan and Foxwoods, you can find them, but they're not many, and they're either pretty small stakes or larger. So I guess my question for you guys is, and Terrence in particular, because I know he used to play a lot of limit, is what do you think drives that? I mean, I realize that a lot of people have a preference for no limit because it's what they see on TV with the tournament and the WSOP and stuff like that. But I just don't understand why it's so extremely lopsided. For example, up at Foxwoods on a like a Wednesday or a Thursday night, they might have they'll have a couple of 2-4 limit games, maybe 1 4-8 limit game, 1 20-40 limit game, and then they'll have like 30 no limit games, 1-2 and 2-5. So I've always kind of been mystified as to why it's so lopsided in the interest for no limit as opposed to limit. And if you guys have any thoughts on that, I'd appreciate hearing them. Like I say, I've learned how to play no limit to the point where I'm comfortable with it now. In some respects, I actually prefer it. So I'll, like today's a Saturday, I'll go up to Foxwoods later this afternoon, and we'll see if there's the 10-20 game usually goes on Saturday, but I'll kind of do some reconnaissance and see if the game looks good. If it doesn't look like it's a good lineup, profitable lineup of players, then I'll just stick with 1-2 because I know those games are always usually pretty good. And if they're not, you can move to another table because there'll probably be 25 1-2 games going this afternoon. Anyway, keep up the good work. Really enjoy the show. Love your drops in the show, Ross. The Roscoe report is fantastic. I always look forward to that, even though I don't play much PLO. But anyway, thanks a lot, guys, and take care.
Thanks, John. Terrence?
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Alex from Massachusetts.
Yeah, that's a really interesting. It's a really interesting question. I mean,
what's up,
I don't
guys?
think Limit Hold'em is quite dead yet. I think it's dying a little bit, which is a bit of what he says, but it's sort of a slow death. We had over 100 players for the 10K Limit Hold'em, which was pretty consistent with most of the other 10K games of the World Series. Now, the East Coast, I haven't been out on the East Coast in years, so I don't know.
Seems like it's regional, right? Because LA has always had a strong Limit Hold'em community.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to.
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. There's the 100, 200 to the Commerce. You mentioned you're at Matt Grapenthine's place. He's playing that game once in a while.
There's several 30-60 Limit Hold'em games there all the time.
exactly. The Bellagio, I think, has had games. So yeah, it's wherever the players are. So it's dying maybe, in the East Coast. I totally understand that. Doesn't the fact that there's games at the Commerce and the Bellagio doesn't
doesn't help him
too much. But there are definitely some factors. You mentioned the TV effect. There's the other thing is that the news that Limit Hold'em got solved.
Right.
Its heads-up format certainly doesn't help. Nobody wants to play a game that computers will potentially play them at. I mean, obviously, if you're playing live, that's much less concern. It's somewhat, to some extent, less exciting than I think the other Limit games.
I think that's an understatement. I think Limit Hold'em. I played a ton of Limit Hold'em as well. You have too, obviously, but No Limit Hold'em is a more interesting game. It's
a more interesting game. I mean, I wonder about the future of No Limit Hold'em when everybody is doing things like balancing their timing tells and stuff like that.
Sure.
I've played Limit Hold'em and No Limit Hold'em tournaments this series. I have to say that, regardless of what my skill set would be, it's way more fun to play Limit Hold'em tournaments because you're just getting so few hands in No Limit. It's awful.
Yeah.
But compared to it's maybe a little less intricate than games like Stud. There's fewer decision points than there are in Triple Draw, and then the split pot games. I think the split pot games are interesting because I think people tend to play them worse. And that's another thing about Limit Hold'em is that people are pretty good at it now.
Yep.
At most of the reasonable levels, people don't. The mistakes that people make in Limit Hold'em aren't nearly as large as they are in the Omaha and Stud. In the split pot games, they're not nearly as large as you. Potentially, people make huge mistakes in Triple Draw because of the breaking mistakes. People give free cards or people raise in spots they shouldn't. People make significant mistakes in Raz. Although that's a game I think people play decently well. It's a combination of things. Is that people play Limit Hold'em pretty well. It's a less intricate game than most of the other mixed games, and then you've got the television effect where everybody wants to play No Limit. Now, I don't know, talking about Foxwoods, I don't know whether people play draw games there. I don't know whether people play stud games there. I assume they do, and I think there's almost two groups of poker players these days. There's the guy who will play the limit games, the mixed games, and then there's the No Limit and the PLO player, and they sort of, these groups don't really hang out together in the mix that much. But it's unfortunate because shorthanded Limit Hold'em can be a good game. It's a fast game, which I think is fun.
That helps.
It's when you play the Six Max Limit Hold'em is fun specifically because you're almost always in hand. There's so little downtime, right? You don't break out the Kindle and you don't wander over the rail because you're probably in a hand shortly after you just.
It's almost like Zoom.
Yeah, it's live Zoom poker, definitely.
I will say with No Limit with regards to No Limit Hold'em, tournaments versus cash. Tournaments are very similar to Limit Hold'em almost now. No Limit Hold'em, you see so many people playing small ball, these fractional of the pot bets. I mean,
sure.
Versus cash, where you have guys betting, over betting the pot and stuff like that, where it's deeper, more interesting game. It seems like
guys will still you'll see some creative plays in No Limit tournaments where it's small ball on the flop, small ball on the turn, and then they'll just make a huge overbet on rivers.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of really great players do that, or maybe they overbet the turn, or whatever it is, because you do have some more flexibility. But it's like polarized bet sizing, I guess. Is sort of the way to think about it. And No Limit is obviously a much more complex game when it's 200 big blinds deep than when it's 40 big blinds deep. It's a tremendously complex game, 200 big blinds deep, because you have queens before the flop, and you're like, well, this is the best hand most of the time, but I certainly don't want to get all my chips in. It's a bit early to, I think, eulogize Limit Hold'em. It's not quite dead, but it's obviously not strong, and I don't predict that it'll be very strong. It's certainly not getting any stronger, but definitely, if you got to learn to play the games that are in your area, and that's what a poker player does. You have to adapt to what's going on.
Email number 2.
Ivan Zarate writes, hey guys, just sending this email because you need one, and I need some Pokercast run good for the rest of the series. Thanks and best of luck. That's outside the box right there. I love it. He's just flat out begging for the karma, and let's give it to him. I think he deserves it for sending that in. I like it.
That's good.
Email number
3. Nick writes, what's up, guys? This is Nick from Rio Linda, California, 4,975 miles from Kells. As you're well aware, online poker is outlawed in California, so occasionally I make the trek up to Reno to play in Nevada on WSOP.com. Last night I was playing a 6-handed 10-cent, 20-cent no-limit hold'em game, and I came across this hand. I had 30, villain had 50. I raised to 54 cents with the 4-5 suited T. This is what might be your hand.
If this was Pee-wee's Playhouse, like, the chair would be going crazy.
I raised to 54 cents with the 4-5 suited. Cutoff calls. Villain in the small blind calls. Flop comes 4-4-4.
Okay.
That's a good flop. I love these hands. Villain leads for $1, and I raised to $3.30 with the nuts. Cutoff folds and villain insta-shoves, and I called to rake in the $58 pot. Villain showed 10-10 in the hole. So 2 questions. Any news on the legalization of online poker in California? I like Reno okay, but it'd be nice to play online in the comfort of my own home. 2, what do you think about my raising the flop with the unbeatable nuts? I figure that he wouldn't figure me for a 4 if I raised. I also figure he likes to figured. I also figure that I would need to raise flop if I intended on playing for stacks, and because he led on the flop with no draws, I figured him at least for a pair in the hole, giving him a pretty strong hand. Please tell me how wrong I am. Love the show. Thanks for the news and entertainment every week. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the raising the flop. You know, if you're going to get stacks in and the guy's got a hand, he's rarely going to fold after he bets or after he leads out. So,
right. So we've got a pot. So trying to reconstruct the action. The pot size looks like it's about $1.50 on the flop, and then you've got a bet of $1.
Yep.
And we're playing $30 behind. So a raise is going to have to go in at some point, right? So I think the flop is a very good opportunity to do it, and exactly for the sort of the reasons that you mentioned, right? Like, so if he does have a hand like pocket eights, there's a lot of overcards that can come on the turn, and they're going to scare him. So you might as well get it in now. Like I would, like, a lot of the times I would slow play quads. I mean, most of the time that you get quads, right, you probably want to slow play. But again,
well, because if he's got like queen jack and a queen comes off in the turn or something like that,
yeah, you want him to be able to make something. But but yeah, like he's not going to have aces because he didn't 3-bet pre-flop, so he's probably not going to have kings or queens either. But the fact that he leads into the flop, maybe he might have a hand like ace jack or something like that, and that might even call a small raise, which is what you did there. 10 by the way, shoving $30 into this pot with tens is atrociously bad. Like,
it is, yeah.
Like, I mean, you can't define way ahead, way behind better, right? Because if you, as the pre-flop raiser, has worse than tens, you are certainly folding.
Are you certainly folding? Are you certainly folding nines in that spot? I don't know, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if the action goes, you bet $1, and the other guy the other guy bets $1, you raise to $3, and the other guy shoves for 30.
You're just knocking the 2 nines.
As the pre-flop regressor, like, I'm not thinking the nines are very good that often there. It's certainly a strange line, but I mean, you're certainly never getting aces or kings to fold, and aces and kings are certainly in his range. So shoving with tens is really awful. I mean, you talk about way ahead, way behind. No, I think the flop plays, especially when it comes something like 4-4-4, right? Like if it were a different flop, that might be one you have to slow play. Like a lot of times when you flop quads, if you had deuces and it comes 7 deuce deuce, that's maybe a time you want to flat.
Yeah. As far as the news in California on the legalization of online poker, the tribes have been fighting for ages, and I think I recently read that they're still battling the bad actor clause with PokerStars, and I kind of roll my eyes now when I see any news coming out, because it's kind of wake me when something happens kind of thing, and nothing's happening anytime soon. So
yeah, I think Eric Holreiser, the legal counsel for Stars, said something like, it had a pretty aggressive statement for this. People calling Star, they wanted to keep, they definitely want to keep Stars out of there. You might be an interesting follow on Twitter if you're interested in PokerStars. PokerStars is at least fight to get into California.
All right, let's take a break there. We've got a couple of guests coming up after the break. We're going to talk to Mr. Ryan Laplante, he of the 12 cashes at this year's World Series of Poker, and also Mitch Towner, who took down the Monster Stack event for his first bracelet sometime 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago about. So he settled down a little bit. I'm sure he's pretty excited right after the win. We're going to talk to him after the break. Come on back. You're listening to the 2+2 Pokercast.
What's up, guys? My name's John Beaupre, and I'm the founder and lead instructor of PLOQuickPro.com. Now, we're the only site that has an entire suite of PLO courses designed by myself, a WSOP champion, and 3-time Supernova Elite PLO Crusher Alien Slayer. Over the past few years, we've successfully taught more than 1,000 players how to master the fundamentals, increase their win rate, and move up in stakes for good. So whether you're a small or micro stakes grinder trying to become a winner for the first time, or you're already a winning player looking to make more money and move up in stakes, and especially if you're a no-limit player looking to make the transition to PLO, we've got the videos, PDFs, and tutorials to help you plug leaks and look at the game in a new way. To learn the guaranteed fastest ways to master the fundamentals, increase your win rate, and move up in stakes for good, visit www.ploquickpro.com/pokercast to get your very own personalized PLO curriculum. Or even better, if you'd like to reach out to me personally, shoot me an email at john@ploquickpro.com and I'll help you find the best courses to fit your game. Good luck.
Attention everyone not named Alan Kessler. Have someone you would love to appear on the Pokercast? Have someone you don't want to hear again on the Pokercast? Head on over to the Suggest a Guest thread in the Pokercast forum at 2plus2.com, and Adam will do his best to make you happy. P.S. Chainsaw, you can post too.
Back to the 2plus2 Pokercast. This week, T, our first guest is longtime friend of the show. If you listened last year, he had his own episode. The only man to ever have his own episode of the Pokercast. He narrated his run through the World Series Poker main event. Yeah, 2 of them. That's right. This year, he won his first World Series of Poker bracelet a few weeks ago, so we had to have him on to tell the story. Welcome back to the show, Ryan Laplante.
Thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate it, guys.
First, congrats on the bracelet. Event 12, the $565 PLO. You won, I'm sure you probably know this, you beat the biggest field in the history of tournament poker for PLO. 2,483 players.
That must make him the best Omaha player in history.
That makes him the best Omaha player in the world.
Definitely the best.
Apparently.
beat everybody. Ryan...
tournament PLO is the most skillful game out there.
It is indeed. So
that it is.
Yeah. Give us a rundown on the tournament, your feelings after. You're a professional poker player. This is your first bracelet. Obviously a big milestone in your life.
Yeah, it's been absolutely ridiculous. Most professionals, most of them at least, like their dream is just winning a bracelet or making a big final table and having a huge score. And, to actually get one when there's only, 69 given out this year and, well, technically a couple more because of the team event. And oftentimes there's multiple dual bracelet winners, so they only really give out about 60 of these each year to different individuals, and to be one of that 60 is absolutely incredible. I've been watching the World Series of Poker on TV since I was 12 years old, and I'm 26 now. And honestly, I've been legitimately daydreaming about having a bracelet since I was 16. Wow. So to actually get one when I've been pretty close in my career multiple times was, words really can't describe how much it means to me.
Oh, I can imagine. Probably couldn't wipe the smile off your face for a while. You had it on your wrist. Are you wearing it now? What's happening with the bracelet?
Most people don't really wear them at the table. The one exception to that is Scotty Wynn. Kind of.
It just matches what else he's wearing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not really surprising that he does. I wore it the day that I got it, the day that I did the ceremony, and I'll wear it for the main event this year, and then I probably won't wear it again while I play.
What about defending next year? That was one of the things that a lot of people will do is they wear it in the same event in the following year.
Oh, that'd be a cool thing to do. Yeah, I could do that as well.
I remember from editing the thing last year, you did really care about winning the bracelet. You brought it up several times. I was listening to everything you said, and so it a lot of people do really fantasize about the bracelet, but to actually pull it off is it's a big milestone for sure.
And the cool thing was that you had your fiancée present it to you. I saw you at we talked about your speech on our show and how moving and touching it was, given the tragedy that happened in the same time there. But also to have your fiancée present it to you. I mean, it was sort of a whole bunch of things all at once.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that day was really bittersweet with the Orlando shooting, but having him there and getting my bracelet that day was still, even with that, was still the happiest day of my life to a huge degree. I mean, my fiance Chris has been so supportive over the years. When Black Friday occurred, we'd been dating for only 6 months, and he'd barely lived outside of the state of Wisconsin. He had for about a year before that. Yet after we'd been dating for only about 10 months, I guess it was just over a year that we'd been dating, that he agreed to move with me out of the country to Toronto for 6 months to support me playing poker. And the last, 5 years has been him following me from country to country, just where the longest we had stayed in place was not in the U.S. Then the second longest we stayed in place was in Vegas. And, that's a lot of years of him not being able to work, of him just relying completely on me and my playing. And, a lot of my career has been a lot of close calls and really huge situations. So it was a lot of years of, no, we weren't, necessarily hurting financially. We were always able to pay bills and do that kind of stuff, but by no means were we well off. And, there was a lot of times over that stretch where if I wasn't able to borrow money from backers and do that kind of stuff, I would have missed bills. We would have been behind. So him being able and willing to put up the stress of dealing with that has been, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, the life of a poker significant other is often, one that doesn't get enough, that we don't hear enough about. Right. Like you said, like moving out of, an American moving out of the country into Canada, you can't work. Yeah, like yes, you can work obviously as an online player, but you're the only one. So that's
especially with multi-table tournaments specifically versus cash. Right? You have the variance in multi-table tournaments that you don't have in cash. So to Ryan's point, where you can go long stretches, even if Ryan's the best player in the world, he's going to go many tournaments without cashing in MTTs, whereas if you're a cash game player, you have constant income. Sorry, T, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Oh, no, it's no problem. But I did want to talk, Ryan, about the events in Orlando and how you talked about it as bittersweet. I'm glad you brought that up already. Does part of you wish that you'd won on a different day to be able to celebrate this, sort of without this mixed emotions? Or obviously we talked about it gave you a platform to address the horrible things that happened. So do you sort of think of it as a blessing in disguise, or what's your reaction of you were one of the first openly gay men in poker. I mean, I think you were the first one that I actually met.
Right.
Well, that came out, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I knew Spencer Sun for a long time, but he wasn't, as well known as you.
Right.
But you've definitely you're gay and you're proud of it, and you make sure everybody knows about it. So was it important for you to be able to use that platform to talk about the events in Orlando?
I mean, it was definitely important to me to be able to use that platform to be able to talk about it. But obviously, I wish it just didn't occur. Be much better that it hadn't. But as I've said this a lot of times over the past few weeks, and there are a lot of other pros who follow this exact same sentiment, is that as poker players, we for whatever reason we happen to be in the spotlight to some degree, and as a poker player yourself, you don't really do any true good in the world. I do good for myself. I strongly believe that poker has taught me a lot of wonderful things about life, has made me personally into a much better person than what I was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. It's because of the things that you need to learn in order to become a very good professional, especially in this day and age. But the game itself doesn't really add anything to the world. However, as players, we happen to be able to be in the spotlight at times, and it gives us a platform to be able to reach out to other people. And, I feel as though that it's, when I am fortunate enough to have that spotlight, that it's kind of my duty to try to do even just a little bit of good in the world. And having my bracelet ceremony coincide with that, it seemed like an appropriate time to say something, and to say something that was just heartfelt. I did end up writing what I said down beforehand, but it was my first draft. I just wrote exactly what I was feeling and practiced it. That way when I did break down, that I'd be able to finish it out. So yeah, it's definitely really bittersweet, but I'm definitely very thankful to be able to have, that type of platform to at least be able to, make there be some minuscule silver lining. And, obviously the U.S. and the rest of the world still has a lot of progress to be made with GLBT rights and discrimination and treatment, and, all the other discrimination that occurs in the U.S. on a day-to-day basis. But, those of us who are in the spotlight are willing to stand up and say what's on our mind, and, to promote things like acceptance, then hopefully step by step the world will slowly get better.
Yeah, it was a touching speech, as we mentioned, and thank you for doing that. Let's quickly go back to the PLO event that you won. Is PLO a game you play a lot? I know, I'm just looking at your caches now. We mentioned it. You have 12 caches at the World Series now with the tag team event. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7 are in No Limit Hold'em, I believe, of the caches. Maybe 8 now with this one. And the Omaha that you did take down. You're a well-rounded player. Clearly, you have caches in Limit, in Omaha, in Horse. Give us a take on your PLO history. Do you play a ton of PLO?
So I actually don't really get to play much PLO by itself. I do enjoy PLO, but I strongly prefer Pod Limit Omaha High-Low. I've been learning Pod Limit Omaha High-Low tournaments honestly, since I started playing poker. I happened to befriend someone named AJB444 way back in the day. This was back in 2019, and I just learned the absolute basics of PLO 8 from him. And over the years, as I've gotten better at Hold'em, I've gotten much better at PLO 8 tournaments as well. And when I do have access to playing PLO 8 tournaments, I tend to mix PLO 8 with my No Limit Hold'em games. So when I'm playing on the larger sites, I generally have 1 to 3 PLO 8 tournament tables up. I'll play all the highest binds, all the 2Ks and that kind of stuff. And honestly, I currently believe that I'm one of the best PLO 8 tournament players in the world. I play versus all of the best players in it. I have a really good, insight as to who I believe to be better than me, who I'm confident I'm around the same skill as. And that, game is obviously fairly similar to PLO as far as some of the theory aspects go. How you're supposed to approach pre-flop due to how close equities run together, how you're supposed to approach flops, turns, and river decisions. Obviously PLO 8 has the high-low aspect, which changes how you're supposed to view, what flops matter to you and how they matter and what equities look like and that kind of stuff. But once you have a good idea as to what an equity situation looks like, PLO and PLO 8 are very similar games, as far as in terms of just analyzing your equity and then analyzing what you're supposed to do with that equity based off of how close equities run together. So that gave me a really good foundation to, approach and view situations, and certainly helped me out a lot. Also, I happen to be friends with some fairly skilled PLO players, one of whom was railing my final table in person. And, I asked him about some of the finer, theory aspects, making sure that he agreed with the way that I was thinking about and approaching situations. And that gave me a lot more confidence on the final table in the decision-making process that I had to go through, which I really needed because even though it was a $565 buy-in and had a pretty turbo structure, the final table was 6 PLO professionals and 6 very good PLO professionals too, all guys who play mid to high stakes cash games. The guy that I ended up beating heads up, Sean Shea, who's a very, very nice guy and absolutely a great player. Way back in the day, he was a 25-50 6 max PLO reg on Stars, and he still plays high stakes cash games, down in Florida. And, having to battle against someone like him, was very, very difficult. I actually, watching him play throughout the final 27 on down, and I played with him a lot, I realized pretty quickly that he was a very, very good player, and watched a lot of what he did and copied a lot of bet sizings and that kind of stuff that he was using, and a lot of ways that he was building his ranges in certain situations. I could just copy it and figure out from there why he was doing it and adjust my own game around how he was approaching it.
That's really interesting. I wanted to touch on one of the theory things that you talked about with PLO and PLO8, and one of the things that I hear a lot, and one of the things that I've experienced a little bit, is a lot of people say that in tournament PLO generally, tight is right. It's not always the most exciting way to play, but I want to talk about the various stages of the tournament. Obviously, you played in a huge field. You played for a really long time. Mm-hmm. It can't be right. It definitely can't be right to play tight all the time. But do you think it's because of the nature of the stack size and stuff like that, it's maybe a little more straightforward and a little more tight than when you play cash, either whether you're talking about PLO high or PLO 8?
I mean, I don't really know cash games for PLO or PLO 8. I've got some basics down that when you open, you should almost never fold to a 3-bet. You should, just some of the absolute basics down. So I don't really know the difference between, tournaments and cash games for PLO 8 or PLO. PLO 8 and PLO 8 tournaments and cash games are wildly different.
I guess would you agree that with the common prevailing wisdom that you kind of have to play tournaments tight, I guess is a
I mean, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I played really tight in the huge majority of situations. And not only was I playing tight, especially in early position, I was playing very, very, very tight. I would open fold bad kings, bad queens. I'd open fold even some okay jacks. Hand Jack 6-3 with the suited jack. I'm just open folding that kind of stuff. Although I wouldn't say that's okay jacks. That's more bad jacks. But fine Jack.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't even think
Jack
of that.
Jack 6-5 with one suit that. Right. I'm probably open folding as well, to be honest. At least under gun 1. But in general, when I was playing hands, at least pre-flop, I was only limping. There were a couple very rare exceptions to that where I would come in first as a raise. But if I was coming in first as a raise, I was almost always potting and putting in 25% or more of my stack. Yeah, the only time that I raised pre-flop was when I potted and was putting in 30% plus of my stack.
With the top of your range there.
Yeah.
12 cashes this year, as we mentioned. You are currently, I believe, 8th in the World Series of Poker Player of the Year. That's in the standings without your cash. There's a bunch of people really close. I think 4th and 8th have about a 60-point swing, where you have 1,310 points. 4th, Paul Volpe, has 1,365 points. The leader, obviously, Jason Mercier, is having a ridiculous series, 2,100 points, and would take something special for him to lose But, I mean, how important is that? The caches, the player of the year, you've got 12 caches. I believe the record's 13, is that right?
Yeah, the record for most in a year is 13, held by Ismail Bojang. He had 10 during the summer and 3 from APAC.
Right.
Those don't count.
Yeah.
Those don't count.
And the record for most in the summer is what I'm at now, is 12.
Now, Alan Kessler would be quick to point out that they're paying 15% of the field now.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, so there's been this debate in, poker as far as, for the World Series, what of these records matter, what bracelets matter, or whatever. And, we as players, we don't really decide that. The World Series decides that.
Yeah.
If they want to pay out 15% of people, they pay out 15% of people. And then if we as players care about the records, then the record standard is set by the World Series as far as what rules are dictated for these types of things. Now, let's say that this is the only year the World Series does 15%, and next year they go back to 10% or 12%. Then yes, I believe there should be an asterisk next to my name. 15 caches, or 15% paid out that year, or whatever. But, if they go forward on 15%, then whoever ends up passing me, which I'm sure someone will pass 12 or 13 if I manage to get there. I'm confident someone will do that within the next year or two. Due the nature of paying out 15%. If they do that, then people will end up getting higher records, and it should just be looked at. That's the new standard.
Well, yeah, because the alternative is we're going to do math every time we have every year. We're going to go, where did this person cash? Did they cash in the 11th percentile? Well, we're going to subtract one. Well, that makes no sense.
The way to look at that too is that there are a lot of my finishes between 11 and 15%. Where I'm playing wildly differently if I'm in the money or not.
Right.
If in the money at that point, I don't really care about busting. The payout difference between finishing the 15th percentile and the 4th percentile is very, very small. So if you bust in between that range, you aren't really losing that much in equity necessarily.
Yeah.
Not as much as when you're nearing the bubble. If you're nearing the bubble and you bubble the tournament, you're losing a ton in equity. So you better have a really large edge in a situation. You're going to bust right before the money bubble. So if they were paying out 10%, a lot of my finishes in that 11 to 15 range wouldn't be in the 11 to 15 range. They would be in the 11 to 10 range. I would either or higher. I'd be getting into the money, and then I'd be starting to take these really thin situations. There are tons of situations where I busted in 11 to 15 that I would never, ever, ever take if we weren't in the money.
And the other thing that's impressive about your World Series this year, Ryan, is looking at your results, I'm not seeing a ton of 10Ks. I don't know what your schedule's been like. Mm-hmm. It's been a lot of the smaller buy-in big field events where, to get points, and you're playing in the Jason Mercier and other players, Bonomo, playing every 10K. 100 people, whatever, your final table, a few of them, and you get the big points. Did your success change your schedule at all? Did you play any of those? Talk about that for a little bit.
I mean, no, my results really haven't really changed my schedule that much. Each summer I try to play a decent number of the mixed games, and I've been actually getting a decent amount of coaching in the mixed games. I've been getting coached by Randy Ohl and by Benny Glazer, who are two great people to have as coaches for mixed games. So I've slowly been adding more of the mixed games in my schedule, but my results in the PLO didn't really change that much what I was playing. I added in the 1500 PLO. I added in I was going to play the stud 8, but ended up running deep in a 1500 instead. The 5Ks that I played this summer, I was already planning on playing the 5K Turbo and the 5K Reg Speed. The only tournament that I almost played that I only would have because of my win was the 10K PLO. I was told by a lot of people that it's actually a very, very good event, and some of the guys I played with that are really good PLO players. One of them being named Matt, he also final tabled. He's a high-stakes PLO cash reg, and he was telling me that I would crush the 10K PLO field and that I definitely should have played it. but I was playing 1600 at another casino. Ended up busting right near the end of the night, and was like, thought it'd be much better for me to play that. And I probably should have still gone to the Rio, sold for the 10K PLO, and hopped in based off of what everyone had told me. So maybe next year I'll fire some more of the 3Ks and 10Ks for mixed. I'm hoping that by 2 years from now that my mixed gains will be good enough where I can play most of the 10Ks.
Terrence and I have been talking, and the whole poker world has been talking about Chris Ferguson and Howard Litter coming back to the World Series of Poker this year. You've been outspoken in the past about what you feel is right and what isn't right in the world of poker and online poker. Have you run into or sat down at a table or been near any of these guys?
Yeah, I actually played with him in the PLO. It was 30-some people left, and when you're that deep in a tournament, the last thing you want to do is be distracted by something that, you're emotional about or care deeply about.
Put yourself on tilt. Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Essentially, put yourself on tilt and take away your focus from what's going on in the moment. So I just completely ignored him, didn't even look at him, just listened to music and focused and, tried my best to play well and to not be distracted. If it had been fairly early in, though, I probably would have said a decent amount of stuff.
There are people who have even said, sorry, Ryan, there have even been people who said things like, Chris shoved, and then I looked down at this hand that was marginal, and I really, really wanted to call and be the guy that busted him, but then I thought about it a little while, and then I folded, and I think that's it's certainly such a disaster to call off or play your hand differently in a spot because you want to be the guy that busts him or whatever you try. It's a tough thing to avoid.
Yeah, you just hurt yourself. You hurt your investors. And you don't really gain anything by doing it. Obviously, Chris doesn't care. If he cared at all, he wouldn't be here.
Right.
I would have wanted to do what Andrew Brokos ended up, discussing with him and tried calling him out, and Ferguson just didn't care at all, really.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier in the show. The indignant response from Chris was pretty disgusting.
Yeah, it's kind of absurd that he's like that, just out of touch with everything. But it is. I guess it is what it is. That's the poker industry has these two super extremes. It has, some of the best people and smartest people I've ever met in my life to a huge degree. And also has just some of the shadiest, worst people I've ever met as well. Some of the people with the biggest, most self-centered egos who don't care about others, don't care about the industry. Yet then again, you have guys like Dan Shack, who's just a shining example of what someone who plays the game at the highest stakes should be. Someone who pushes for other things in the world that actually matter, who donate to charity, who talk about doing those kinds of things, and who don't really care about, the game for the money or for the fame or anything like that, who just cares about the game for the game itself. You've got guys like that, and then you have guys like Chris Ferguson. So it's just it's cool that there are people like Shaq in the industry, and it sucks that there's people like Ferguson, but the nature of the industry draws those kinds of people in. So you end up meeting a lot of really interesting people because of that. And, you just have to kind of deal with the shadiness that goes on.
We mentioned last year your audio blog with the World Series of Poker main event. Really appreciate that. Again, can we look forward to another one this year?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I am working on one as we speak. It will include, it started with my 5K event. I actually haven't done anything for yesterday's take team. I was going to do a short little blurb about it since I only played the first 6 levels of it. I got the starting stack from 5K up to 38,000.
Wow.
And then, I ran very good. I ran very, very, very good. The run started with me getting in threes, 3 ways for 6,000 total pot at 1-200, so I shoved 10 big blinds, got called by aces in some other hand, and flopped the 3. So that's why I've cashed number 12, and that's kind of how my summer has been going. And then my teammate, he was bad enough to have kings lose to jacks. How could he do that?
Yeah.
All in pre-flop, he got sucked out on for a pretty big pot. Yeah, I know.
So you won as a 20% favorite, and your teammate lost as an 80% favorite. I mean, obviously you played way better.
And you should have been playing the whole time.
Most of the time there.
Hold the kids.
Right, exactly. So it's just like, so I was going to do one for that, but since I only ended up playing about half of it, I'll just mention as blurb. And I'll be discussing the events I'm playing today, and I'll be discussing my main event as well. So if I don't have a run in the main, at least you guys will have some lead up into the main event and me trying to go for cashes 13 and maybe even 14 if I get so lucky as to get a 13th. Last year I had a lot of fun with it. I hope this year people really enjoy it as well. I'm very honest and open about what's on my mind, what I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, that kind of stuff, and try to give you guys as real of a view into, the grind of a poker pro as possible at the World Series.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Really appreciate your time and your effort into the audio blog. Congratulations on the great summer so far.
This poker player did an interview at 9 a.m.
Yeah,
It's unreal.
Thank you for being available at 9 a.m. That was great. And we look forward to the blog, as I mentioned, and go and get a 13, 14, 15 cashes.
Thank you guys for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
That was Ryan Laplante. Obviously nice of him. He sounded like he was a little tired there at the beginning, but great interview overall. Amazing series for him, and I'm looking forward to that blog. I think it'll be fun listening for everybody.
Yeah, and so happy to have a guy who won a bracelet and is really appreciative of it, a guy who's been working for it a long time, and it really means something to him. So good to see one of the good guys taking down bracelets. A lot of good guys taking down bracelets this year, but Ryan definitely near the top of the list of guys that were happiest that took one down.
The next one we're happy for, let's bring him in now. This is our second guest this week. He's a 29-year-old finance professor at the University of Arizona, also occasionally plays a little poker. A couple weeks ago, in his second World Series of Poker event ever, he beat out almost 7,000 entrants to take down Event 41, the $1,500 monster stack, and $1.1 million, not to mention. He is Mitch Towner. Welcome to the Pokercast, Mitch.
Thanks, guys. Pleasure to be on.
Mitch, we talked about your story on our show last week. It's really one of those feel-good stories for the poker community. Obviously, it's pretty feel-good for you with the win, but the poker community as a whole, too, kind of rallies around stuff like this, especially during the World Series of Poker. Tell us the story of your plan this year. I think you were going to I read you were going to a conference that was at the same time as the World Series. What was your plan for poker this summer?
I was only planning on playing this one event. Basically, we have a big finance conference every June in Park City, and it just happened to be a couple of days before this tournament, so I thought it was perfect. I could fly from Tucson, go to the conference in Park City for a couple of days, straight to Vegas. Actually had a flight back on what would have been day 3 of that event on Monday. Figured I'd last, 1 or 2 days, and then go back to work on Monday. And then, ran really well all tournament. Still was in it when my flight came, so I had to cancel that flight. Was checking into hotels, when day 3 ended. I was thinking that I was just going to rent a car and drive back, but just kept lasting and lasting. Had to check into another hotel after day 4, and obviously ended with an amazing result.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned that, you booked a flight back a couple days in. So, clearly everybody wants to win every tournament they play in. But it seemed like for you, it was really about the experience first, right? Jumping into the World Series and playing an event. I think you'd played one event before. Is that right?
Yeah, I played one $1,000 or $1,500 event about 3 years ago. I honestly, this wasn't even on the realm of possibility in my mind. I was just hoping to get a min cash or last for a few days and sort of a hobby and try and get better at poker in the short term. I wasn't even really thinking about the possibility of lasting that long. So.
I want to talk about the final table in a minute, but leading up to it, I think you got to the final table as one of the short stacks. Leading up to the final table, 7,000 people you got to get through. You've got to beat everybody at your table, and MTTs, you can't see 7,000 people. You can only see the people in front of you, or 7,000 entrants. But what was the whole experience like? You go from day to day. Were you up? Were you big stacked? Were you short stacked? Were you grinding away? Give us leading up to the final table. How was the run?
Yeah, starting day one, I chipped up decently, just sort of throughout the day. In sort of those massive fields, there's a bunch of not very good amateurs. So I had a couple of big hands where I'm calling in position with suited connectors and flopping trips, and someone's overvaluing top pair and paying me off for way more than they should. So I just slowly chipped up to 85,000 after day one. Day two, it was a little bit more of the same, just slowly chipping up. I got some bigger hands, like pre-flop, knocked a couple of people out. I think I was up to around 650,000 after day two. Day three is where it really switched around. There was back-to-back hands, there's one hand in between. I got aces in the small blind versus ace-king in the big blind, complete cooler.
Wow.
Doubled up to over 1.5 million in chips. And then I had a table change, and then I pick up aces again, and the guy had jacks and doubled up again. And so I went to dinner break, and it was the first time any of the reporters even had my name listed on the leaderboard, and it was second in chips. And then just sort of was trying to be patient. I mean, I was up to 4 million, which was, a ton of big blinds. So I was consistently in sort of that 60 to 80 big blind range through every single day. Went into day 4, 6 out of 26, and just try to play patient. Didn't get a ton of hands leading up until the final table, and then just got hit with the deck in the final table.
Well, let's talk about the final table. So you get there short stacked. This is the huge payouts, jumps along the way. I mentioned you're a finance professor. I can't imagine you make millions of dollars every year. This has got to be a pretty big deal. These jumps, right? To approach that final table. What was your sort of mindset there?
So, to be honest, I wasn't even trying to think too much about the pay jumps. Obviously, it's more money is nice, but I'm really comfortable with my lifestyle, and it wasn't, where I literally was depending on my next buy-in or my next meal based on this. So I think that actually gave me an advantage, where some people were really worried about some of the cash, and I was just trying to, obviously it's good when people bust out and you ladder up, but I wasn't thinking, if this person busts out, I'd make an extra 40K. I was just trying to stay in my seat. I thought there was, some chance that people would blast off. I thought that, as long as I played good, solid poker, you never know what was going to happen. So that was sort of my mindset, not even really thinking about it.
You at that final table, I watched all the key hands. You picked up, I think, ace-king 3 times, aces a couple times, tens 3 times. I mean, that's got to be fun, right? You're playing the final table and picking up. I mean, it's not your fault. You're getting dealt these hands. But you also had to make some different, some not interesting, but difficult sort of spots where you pick up tens and you get shoved on by ace king and you got to win a flip. But it was probably nice to get dealt all those hands.
Yeah, I didn't do too much fancy until we got down to 3 or 4 handed. It was, what you're saying, just pick up ace king, pick up tens. I guess I got criticized. I was finally able to watch the archive footage for how I played ace king when we were 6-handed. Basically, Dorian, the guy that I got heads up with, and I both had about 30 million in chips, and everyone else had about 10 million in chips.
Yeah, I actually wrote this hand down. You both had about 50 big blinds. You're the chip leaders. Blinds are 300, 600,000. You raised to 1.4 million with ace king. Rios makes it 3.6 million with ace 10 on the button. And you ship 30 million total. Rios folds, and I think it was Jamie Kurtzetter was in the booth, in the commentary booth with Ronnie Barta, and she was saying that this is ICM suicide. But then Ronnie came to your defense and said, "Look, he's out of position. If the flop comes I think he said 9-7-4 or something, he's going to get outplayed by Rios maybe because he's out of position." And he defended your shove there, but it's a pretty big shove. And what was your take on what Jamie said though?
Yeah, so I I think, everything they said was sort of what I was thinking, and I understand why maybe that would be icing suicide. Maybe this goes back to me being an amateur, not so worried about the pay jumps, just trying to keep plus chip EV. I thought there was, with the blinds and antes, there's close to 8 million in there, which is, I guess about 8% of the chips in play.
Sure.
I didn't want to 3-bet to 10 million and then, fold to a 4-bet. 4-bet to 10 million and fold to a 5-bet. And so I was like, I'm not going to mess around with his hand. Blockers to both aces and kings. He's not going to call me with jacks. Like, this looks so strong. So I'm just, picking up 8 million at the risk of him specifically having like aces or kings. So I mean, these professionals are better players than I am, and so if they don't like it, I trust their judgment more. But that was sort of my thought process.
Yeah,
why
Ronnie seemed to
overships.
Ronnie seemed to be okay with it. But interesting, you watched the replay. A lot of guys, David Pham was there at the final table. He had a big rail. I was wondering, as I was watching it, did you have somebody telling you hands after the delay of some of the players, like a lot of people do at the final table?
So I had a buddy who we made a swap when we entered the tournament, who also had a flight back on Monday, and so he wasn't there. But he was watching the live stream and just emailing me all the hands, and then when we'd go on break, I'd read through the hands. Another buddy who bought a small piece of me who was, just specifically texting me like a couple of big hands. There was one hand where I, raised on the button with 4s, and Andrew Moreno 3-bet, and it was sort of a marginal spot, but I got blown off a hand. He only had Jack 8, so, hands like that he was giving me feedback on. So I did have those resources.
Did you manage to pick up any tells in that situation? Because one of the things I always wonder about people at the final table who've got watching things, I might pick up something at the table and think, oh, that guy did something weird. I wonder if that meant he was strong or whether he was weak. And then, you're actually in a situation half an hour later, you can actually, get that, this guy was doing that thing. Was there anything in the physical tell nature, or was it mostly just trying to work about how they were playing?
I would say it's more about how they were playing. The guy that got third, he did a couple of nice check raise bluffs that you wouldn't necessarily expect him to do, and so having the information that he was able to, Mitch Roller is his name, that he was able to make some of these above the rim plays was useful information. But I didn't specifically have live tells on one player in particular.
Another key hand, you got heads up with Rios, who limped on you limped on the button with the 5-3 diamonds. Rios raises to 3.1 million with the ace-9 of clubs. The flop is ace-6 deuce rainbow, and he bets 2.6 into 6.4 million. Kind of a smallish bet there. You call. You're pretty deep. You hit the gut shot on the turn. That was a pretty big hand there. But wondering about your decision to call on the turn, did you think about, on the flop, did you think about folding in there at all?
No. So my strategy going into heads up was I limped 100% of my hands. I limped ace king. I limped queens. I wanted to keep the pot small. I thought that he was more liable to play, big pot poker, and I thought that I could play more post flop and take little shots here and there. And so this actually was really important in this hand, because if I'm, min raising, and then he's 3-betting ace-9, I'm going to get blown off the hand. But since I was keeping the pot small, I'm getting huge implied odds to call that 2.4 million, and then I hit the gut shot straight twice.
Yeah, that was nice.
So, that was my strategy going into heads up, was to try and keep pot small so I could have these, deeper implied odds like happen on that hand.
And then the final hand, he limps on the button with, I believe it was 3s. You raising the big blind with ace-7, and he ships. And you call pretty quickly there with ace-7, a pretty big hand heads up there.
Yeah, I guess this is a little bit of the live tell, but it wasn't based on the hand records or anything. He just didn't seem super strong to me, just the way he was looking at me. And so I thought he was, especially it came immediately after losing this hand where I hit the gut shot straight though. I thought he was liable to sort of be overplaying a hand. So I wouldn't have been surprised if he had queen 10 there or something like that. And so I called it off thinking that even if I lose, what I assume is somewhere in the 40 to 60% range, I'd still be the chip leader and we could grind it away again anyways.
Pretty subdued reaction. You gave it the fist pump when you flopped the 7, and it was clear that you were going to win your bracelet. Part of me was thinking maybe you were still kind of in shock a little bit, wondering, did this really just happen? That's what it seemed to look like anyway.
Oh, 100%. I think I'm still in shock. I was numb for days. Couldn't sleep very well. Stayed up like that whole night, and then I was like so exhausted. And the next night I was still only able to sleep for 5 hours. It just seemed like whenever, all the outpouring of support from all my friends, and it was just unreal, incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, what's that been like? What's it like when, probably some of your friends, if you don't play a ton of poker, don't even maybe know that you play poker, and all of a sudden here you are taking down a bracelet and, $1 million. It must be pretty shocking to a bunch of your friends.
Yeah, for sure. It was cool. I posted on social media that I was 6 out of 26 going into day 4, and then I didn't really update anything. But then some of my friends started to post, and it spread like wildfire. And so I was amazed at how many people that don't even follow poker were watching the live stream and staying up late at night.
Yeah.
I owe some people a couple hours of sleep, but it was fun just to have that support. And everyone wants to talk about the hands and
yeah.
It was
one of the most awesome things is somebody posted on our forum, because we talked about your win last week, and somebody posted on our forum that you went out and played a bridge tournament that you'd committed to, literally just a few hours after you'd won it. And I saw the article on, I think it's bridgewinners.com, was somebody linked to that in our forum. And what was the grand prize in the bridge tournament if you would have taken that?
Well, that was sort of the fun story. We ended up taking it down. To, I guess, give more detail, on Monday, that was supposed to be my flight to L.A. to play in this bridge tournament for a couple of days. The guy I regularly would play with, we were practicing for the World Championships that are coming up. And so then he basically tells the story from his perspective about how he gets some text messages from me being like, actually, I might still be in this tournament, which I wasn't expecting, but so they had to find someone else to fill in for me on the first day. And I was thinking that whenever I busted out, I was just going to rent that car and drive down and still be there for part of the first day. But then it lasted so late, and, hung out and enjoyed the moment all evening, and then jumped on a 6:30 flight, went there, and we ended up winning the bridge tournament too, which was pretty crazy. in terms of prizes, the economics of bridge are a little bit funky. There aren't really cash prizes like there are in poker. It's more about prestige and this rating system. So a lot of people don't really understand why you'd want to play in that sort of situation. But yeah, it was more prestige and practice for the upcoming World Championships.
And you played Magic too. Did I read you're a Magic champion? Is that too?
Yeah, I used to play Magic. So I won the Junior Super Series in 2003.
Oh wow!
Which is the 16 and under World Championships. I actually beat Sam Stein.
Oh no way!
In the final of that tournament. And so I always would joke with my friends when Sam started becoming a big poker player and had all these 7-figure scores. I was like, I think I chose the wrong career.
I could have done that. Did you see? You must see a lot of. If it was back then, I'd imagine David Williams and a lot of guys who came from Magic to poker were probably playing Magic around then.
Yep. I overlapped with all those people.
So you're a Magic champion, you're a bridge champion in poker. What's left? That's, I don't chess. Can you feel like a grandmaster in chess too?
I was a mediocre chess player. We actually have a couple of team state titles in chess because we had at my high school we had the best player in the state on my team, and the way they would do it is it's sort of like tennis or something where you get seeded, and so it's our best player would play their best player, and our second best player would play their second best player, and so we had the best player in the state would always win. We had another guy who was an expert. I was really mediocre, but I was better than most third place people on the other teams. So we were the 4-time state champions in that. But yeah, I haven't really played chess for a while either.
Mitch, before we let you go, we would be remiss if we didn't ask you for your expertise on something. I'm sure you're aware as a poker player of all the sort of, you're a finance guy, and there's so much extracurricular or informal financing that seems to be occurring in the poker world these days, whether we're talking about backing and markup and makeup, and people are buying action, people are shorting action. You might have heard of like the Bank of Timex and things of that nature. What are your thoughts on this whole informal market in tournament poker, including the backing and sort of anti-backing and all that goes along with it? Is it just a natural progression, or is this something that's really like unique and interesting in the poker world in any way?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by all that stuff. I think there's a lot of stuff that makes sense in terms of swapping and trying to smooth risk. I think some of the other stuff where you have negative bets against people is just, or bracelet bets are just degenerate gamblers, and I don't mean that in like a negative way, but degenerate gamblers trying to create more action. Some egos involved. I don't think that serves from like a technical risk shifting perspective as much of a positive effect on the community, but I think some of the backing and swapping and all that sort of thing makes just a ton of sense.
Does it make sense from a perspective? Sorry. There's a couple things I always wonder about from like a risk portfolio perspective is that, for the most part, playing in a $10,000 tournament with a very small edge requires, I think, probably a much bigger bankroll than other people think. And then shorting people in a tournament is insane, from a perspective of, I potentially like the Vanessa 180-1 bracelet bet, or something like shorting somebody where if they win the tournament, they win $500,000 and you have to pay them out. I think, are people being overly aggressive in these spots with just thinking that these black swans can't occur?
Yeah, I think that's a fair characterization. There's a lot of ties to sort of financial markets, and in an efficient setting, shorting someone is same as selling put options. You're exposed to this risk that they could go bankrupt or they could win the whole tournament, and so maybe in the short term you're getting, I think like in the black swan they call it like picking up nickels in front of a steamroller. It can work out well and pick up a whole bunch of small buy-ins, but then when you do have that extreme event, that tail event, then that could obviously bankrupt someone. So it's just a matter of people have that risk aversion and obviously whatever they want to do, their choice.
Yeah, I think they call them bridge jumpers in sports betting. Same thing, you're laying the minus 900 or whatever it is. Thanks so much. Really appreciate your time, Mitch. Congratulations again. Again, great story in poker, and appreciate you coming on and give us your insight.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it. Take care.
That is Mitch Towner. Thanks so much again for him jumping on and giving us his story. What a story, T. Obviously, one of the better ones this year from the World Series, along with the nail salon owner that we talked about earlier.
Right, the kindergarten teacher, the other one, of course.
Oh, yes.
The millionaire maker who was the only non-millionaire maker out of the...
Did she finish third, right?
Because he finished third for that massive, ridiculous $500K bubble. But still, $500K for a kindergarten teacher.
Pretty big deal. Yeah.
A lot of good stories coming out, especially in these small buy-in gigantic fields. Tends to happen, obviously, for obvious reasons.
Hopefully that does happen in the main event if it isn't one of our buddies or... interesting.
What, you don't think that the best story would be a poker player turned MMA fighter / podcaster? You don't think that would be the best story?
Sounds like the best story to me.
I'm just saying, that feels like the best story to me.
I feel that would be the best story. What day are you playing?
I am playing 1B because I'm not missing UFC 200, despite the fact that John Jones can't stay off drugs.
Oh, yeah, I read that.
What happened? He tested positive or something?
This is like probably I'm sorry to go off the rails, but just for 30 seconds.
I'd like to hear your take on that.
Maybe the greatest athletic talent to ever participate in our sport. Dude just can't stay off, like, whatever drug. I don't even know if it's PED or cocaine this time or whatever. Off UFC 200, if it wasn't for the fact that they managed to get Brock Lesnar, they would just have a disaster on their hands.
So that whole fight gets canceled? Nobody jumps in and takes this place?
On
this is me knowing nothing
to
about
fight, like, maybe the most dangerous, like, 205 or not named John Jones. Like, I think people are lining up to jump in, but... I mean, it's 48 hours notice. Like, that's insane for a cage fight.
Impressive, though. My, first reaction is, a lot of people talk about MMA, is it on the up and up, etc. But 48 hours out, a guy tests positive, and it's not suppressed, it's not hidden, it's not buried.
They actually pulled him.
They pulled him from the fight, and given that this is going to cost them and Dana a shit ton of money, clearly, to pull
millions of dollars. It's going to cost John Jones himself probably $5 million. I mean, it's nuts. Dana was on TV last night. I haven't seen it yet, but apparently looking very unhappy.
Well, impressive that he did do it, right? I mean, it sucks to have to say impressive that he acted ethically, but there's a pretty big incentive for him not to act ethically.
Right, and they could have, and it would have been hard for them with USADA saying, like, look, we've just flagged this guy for potential drug abuse. They haven't said what drug, whether it's performance enhancing or recreational. I guess it doesn't matter. They haven't said, but if you're going to bring USADA in, you can't just ignore them when they find something. So it's more impressive that they went back and brought the program, despite the fact that they knew something like this could happen, that they might have to cancel their biggest, or not cancel, but they would lose the main event of their biggest show of the year 48 hours before the fight after investing millions of dollars into it. That's the part that says they're actually trying to clean up the sport.
All right, impressive. We've got we did 2 interviews this week. We don't normally do that anymore. Running out of time. Ross and I have to take off down to the podcast convention starting in about an hour. So we've got some emails left. We're going to carry them over to next week. No Ross report this week. We'll carry those over as well. But let's quickly get to 140 or less, and then we'll wrap it up.
It's 140 characters. That's it. I love hashtags. I love all of them.
Terrence Chan
needs more than 140 characters to express himself.
140 or less.
At Matt Salzberg, or at M Salzberg. This is Matt Salzberg's Twitter. Dealer just told a Scottish guy on my table that it's English only. Which
hashtag America.
It was awesome. I grew up with a couple of Scottish guys, and I've spent a lot of time at their house and listening to their family. I can understand Scottish. I get Scottish. No problem.
You got Scottish. Yeah, I've been. Well, I mean, Ross will appreciate this because he's a Vice guy. I was binge watching a few Vice documentaries this week, and the extent to which they subtitle people who speak English as a first language is amazing. It's like anytime they go to Nigeria,
why do they do that?
Subtitles. Yeah. Anytime they go to Australia, subtitles. It's like these people all speak English as a first language.
We don't need the subtitles on them, though. I mean,
I mean, you get a Scottish guy who's from the country in Scotland and he's had a few drinks, I'm lost.
Yeah, you got to be around it to get it. This tweet came on the day of the tag team event yesterday at the World Series at NHGG, our buddy Gavin Griffin. Good luck to everybody playing the Sorel Mizzy Invitational today.
Ooh,
which was a
shots fired.
Sick burn.
Shots fired.
Yeah, exactly. Daniel Weinman at Not on Tilt 09. In case anybody was wondering how good Jason Mercier runs, we just drove from the Rio to dinner with his laptop on the top of the car, and it stayed there.
What? That's a new record. Your brother, I think I've told you the story, left his cell phone after we went hiking on the top of Grouse Mountain, and we drove all the way down Grouse Mountain, and the cell phone still managed to be on top of the car. That is another level.
It's a bad reg move.
Crazy. All right, thanks to everybody who joined us this week. Thanks to Ryan Laplante for coming on, and Terrence for joining us from Las Vegas. Roscoe here in Chicago, and Mitch Towner as well for joining us just a few minutes ago.
By the time you hear us next week, we're going to be 10 times better at podcasting.
We're going to be better at this podcasting gig than we are now. Yeah. This is what we're here to do, to be better.
Stars is going to regret this decision.
I was going to say, maybe by next week, somebody will be paying us to do this.
Right.
So they're going to be, and for the love, and
they're going to be begging to be back here.
By the way, that's our only payment now. Just so you guys know,
tequila shots.
Our only payment is posting on the forum, you participating in the forum, sending us email, tweeting at us. That's all we get.
And our PLOQuickPro.com as well. They're our sponsor. They're standing with us. They're behind us.
That's true. Okay, so fair enough. But please replace the PokerStars VIP Club by giving us the interaction that we so love.
I agree. Come on over and make it worth our while to do this thing every week. Thanks to you for listening. Really appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.